All right, if members can go ahead and take their seats, we're going to get started. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton.
Here.
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Perez-Verdia. Mr. Perez-Verdia? Okay. Ms. Salato?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, next we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Pop, if you can please come up and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next we have the Land Acknowledgement. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you. All right, so for this special meeting, we have one item on our agenda. Item 4A, resolution number AR 2021-167, resolution of Anchorage Municipal Assembly appropriating American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 local fiscal recovery funds in an amount not to exceed $51,658,683 and allocating in the same amount to projects and programs when tendered. Before I open up the public testimony on this item, and apologies I didn't give advance notice of this, we did get an S version of this item with a few minor changes to it, and I'm wondering if the administration can walk us through some of those changes in the S version before we open it up to the public hearing on this item.
Certainly happy to do that, Mr. Chair. This is Jason Bockenstead, Chief of Staff to the Mayor. I'll run through a couple of the actually all of the changes. As you mentioned, they were relatively minor. In the title and also within Section 1, we added that when tendered, these funds will go into the Federal Direct Grants Fund. It's Fund 241900. Essentially, that just lines up with the language that we used for the CARES Act. And the reason we wanted to make sure that we were using relatively the same language for that. As we kind of go down, the next change was in Section 10. In the original version, it had $30,000. It was meant to say $500,000 for this tax relief program. It was correct in the attachment A, and we just wanted to line those up. In Section 28 next, we removed who would ultimately potentially be available for these funds, because we still want to figure that out. So we deleted to the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness. I think there's some discussion around potentially doing this internally through our mass care team. And Section 30, we increased that amount from $3,750,000 to $4 million to allow us to do a little bit more work in that area. And then in Section 36, we made the error and made the Summer Baseball League a AAA Major League team when we meant to say that it's an amateur collegiate summer baseball team this year. And then in sections 38, 39, and 40, the words "are available" after the dollar amount were left out. Again, we wanted to align that with the rest of the document. And then in section 39, in addition to that one change, we also lowered the amount from $50,000 to $25,000 for that grant, as they were also awarded a mayor's community office grant. So they did not need the full $50,000. And then finally, we added a section 41 to this that would allocate $100,000 to the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness to fund their HMIS contract for fiscal year 2022, which runs from July 21st to June 2022. And that is the extent of the changes, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Buckenstead. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to the public hearing on this item. Welcome.
Didn't want to start with anyone on the phone?
We do not have anyone on the phone for this one.
Just checking.
Thanks.
No problem. For the record, my name is Louis Imbriani. I did send out an email, didn't know if I was going to be here this evening due to prior commitments, but I am asking this body that you postpone this. If not until next meeting or longer. This is kind of a pork barrel AR. We didn't really know what the rules were for the American Rescue Plan Act until yesterday, the general public, that is. I didn't even get through watching all of the video of the presentation. It was 3 hours long. Couldn't be here yesterday, so I think that it would be in the best interest of the public if we get more time to look at it and what those rules are, because there already seems to be lacking transparency with the CARES Act funds that were passed. A lot of shuffling of money, a lot of reallocating of funds. So I ask that you postpone this or so that you can make smaller bills to address each individual sector. I know it takes a little bit longer, but transparency is key. So again, I ask that you postpone. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Prince Wankudu. I'm the president of Revive Alaska Community Services. I will first of all thank the chairman and the members of the assembly for considering our proposal, and thank you for making sure we were awarded some amount in this allocation. As you are aware, we requested about $600,000 when we thought we could only repair the pantry that was broken down and the roof caved in, but our engineers advised us that more extensive reconstruction would have to take place, and that would cost about $3.5 million. We already now have some corporate and individual donors who are ready to pitch in and help, and therefore we are requesting either we get the total $600,000, because on the list, section 37, we only got 500 out of the 600 we requested. But since we're now all aware that it's going to cost us way beyond what we're requesting, we're asking at least that we get the maximum amount we requested. Then number two, we are also requesting that in the case where there is balance, which of course in the original thing that we had, there was a balance. I don't know with all the adjustments now if there will be. We are intending to request an additional $250,000 in order to augment the one we already requested. This is just a fraction that will help us now lay some money down whereby the individual and corporate donors will match up what is remaining to help us rebuild the pantry. Thank you again for your continued support, and I will look forward to your consideration of this new request. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you from Mr. Weddleton.
Yes.
Well, hi. Thanks for coming, and thanks for the tour the other day. It was real interesting.
Thank you.
Seeing your operations, very inspiring. So I'm a little unclear. So we have, for anyone watching, this is section 37. So 500,000, and you had requested 600,000?
Yes, originally.
Okay, and then there's an additional 250,000?
Yeah,
you're
in
looking
case
for?
there's a balance, which we saw initially in the initial in section or the addendum, the attachment. If you guys, after distribution, the first round, if there was a balance, we're requesting a supplemental 250,000 just for this particular allocation. But if not, at least let's get the full amount we requested initially.
Could I follow up a bit? Okay, I don't want to get into too much detail, but you know, the description here, it's I think more focused on when you thought you could repair the horse paddock, but now it's a whole different vision. So I think at some point we probably need to really redefine, you know, kind of the what's written here as far as what it's used for needs to be redone.
It's
To be
still
more
basically
clear.
the same, you know, focus of, there's no redefinition required because we are working on the same property, on the same footprint. You know, it's a matter of the city codes and all we have to do to get it to match with the code. So the engineers are saying the extent of repair that is needed, that it's not just repaired in one section, you are dealing with the whole building, which will now, as a matter of engineering, be more or less reconstruction.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Michelle and I'm a blue-collar worker. I don't really think you understand that $52 million is not your money to spend, it is our money. I also see 3 acting words in there, and we don't have a mayor. We have an acting mayor, and you've confirmed that she is going back to becoming an assembly member. $52 million is a lot of money for you guys just to snatch up and throw away. Because I've looked through what you guys are going to do, and we're once again prioritizing vagrants over constituents. It's our money. You threw this in. You literally have sideswiped all of us. So we haven't been able to really look at what you're doing. Surprise, surprise. And now there was a bunch of changes that was made. I mean, really, I just really need to be clear. We don't have an elected mayor. And to give a non-elected mayor authorization to spend $52 million of our money without giving us adequate input? Is that nuts, Dunbar? Come on. I mean, what are you guys thinking? I emailed you, I told you, I feel like my city is being run by teenagers, and this is just even more clarifying that statement. It's like saying $52 million, let's go to Cabo. Stop. I mean, I'm driving around, there are vagrants all over the place. So what you're doing isn't working. And what you're trying to do is just continue that going on. They're going to spread. You're going to buy these buildings. You're going to do this stuff. You're not fixing the problem. And $52 million is way too much to give someone who we, the people, did not elect to just spend. So please consider giving us, the people, some time to figure out not only what you already threw at us in less than 24 hours or 48, because I work for a living, but also to figure out what all these other changes are. I want to see those in writing. Start respecting us. 45,000 people just voted to tell you we are done with this kind of behavior. Where are the adults in the room? Right there. That's the only one. Swear to God. Get it together.
Thank you. I do just want to note for the record, I believe all of the documents, including the S version, I'll look for a head nod from someone. Okay, so all of the documents, including the S version, are available on the dais right here. Yes, but Thank you, ma'am. I am just noting for the public that the documents are available if anyone would like to see them. Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Yes.
Would you
Mr.
just please
Constant.
read for the public, we're in a public hearing, and the clapping and cheering and all of this is pretty distractive and it's not appropriate.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't have my normal script in front of me, but normally during a public hearing, I do ask for folks not to disrupt the meetings with clapping or other disruptions. So that would be really helpful if we can avoid those. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Anchorage Assembly. My name is Sarah Price, and I am the current president of Anchorage Youth Court. Our nonprofit organization has been helping the youth of Anchorage for over 30 years now. We collaborate with the juvenile justice system to provide restorative justice options to the youth in our community. Not only do we give teenagers who have made a mistake a second chance, but our program also trains youth to provide this service. In AYC, we take great pride that our members uphold a professional setting as clerks, attorneys, and judges, and the impact we have on our community. Youth who are members are equipped with lifelong skills and often continue on to great colleges where they pursue careers centered around improving our world. Those who go through AYC as defendants are also given great opportunities to learn from their offenses, and many gain perspective on where they are and where they want to be in life. As a result of the services we provide, the juvenile recidivism rate is decreased, and defendants who come through our courtrooms are more likely to focus on bettering their futures. Even through the pandemic, Anchorage Youth Court has worked hard to develop innovative ways to continue to offer restorative justice to the youth of Anchorage. After analyzing our finances currently and accounting for our standard requests of the municipality in previous years, we have formed our request for this specific grant regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. These funds would go directly towards supporting our employees who have continued to help our program throughout the pandemic, as well as our new employees who will aid us in expanding our services to the city of Anchorage. Most years we rely on fundraisers and donations to keep the organization running smoothly. However, like other organizations, the pandemic has impaired the support. While we may be one of the smallest financial requests for this bill, I assure you that these funds will have a large impact. So we simply ask that you continue to support Anchorage Youth Court into the future so we can continue to provide justice for youth, by youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am here to give testimony in support of appropriating the American Rescue Plan, and I would like to tell you my...
Apologies, ma'am. Can you state your name for the record?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's Amaris Mercado.
Thank you.
I am the intake / student support specialist at 9-Star Adult Education on I Street, and I would like to share my story with you. I came to Anchorage feeling, sorry. I wanted to get my GED, and I saw an opportunity at 9-Star Adult Education, and I started in August of last year, and I graduated in March of this year. And not only did they help me get over the fear of passing, not being able to pass my GED, they also gave me confidence in being able to move forward. And whenever I contacted the staff there at 9-Star, they were always happy to help. They were always respectful and understanding, as well as really nice in understanding my story and why I could not get my high school diploma. When I graduated, I felt like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. I felt good about myself. My confidence was restored, and I no longer felt embarrassed not having gotten my GED. I felt good about myself. I felt good about the accomplishment that I was able to accomplish because it was mine, and I put in the work and devotion to it. Now I am really happy with my decision, and I would like to encourage other students to also try and go this way and obtain their GED. I now work there, and they have been really supportive. I started in April of this year, and after experiencing what I had experienced at 9-Star, I wanted to pass it forward, and I wanted to help other students achieve their GED success. They have helped me grow, work efficiently, and I have enjoyed working there. So please continue to fund the 9-Star program so we can keep working and help in job seekers like myself. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Welcome. I also want to note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Perez-Verdia on the phone. He's been with us for a few minutes now. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is John Van Ravensway. I'm a family physician, and I would like to thank the Assembly for this opportunity to speak to you and advocate on behalf of the community of Mountain View. Not that I speak
Could you
for Mountain
speak a
View.
little closer to the mic, please? Yeah, you can move. You can move.
I'd like
up
to
if you'd
thank you. For, my name is John Van Ravensway. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and give you a little information on our nonprofit. I'm here to represent Mountain View in a way. I don't speak for Mountain View, but I speak for my patients, who many of them live in Mountain View, and our board, our staff, and our wonderful population that we serve in Mountain View on behalf of Mountain View Health Services, which we have been allocated $470,000 towards the clinic. So we would like to show our appreciation for you for that, and tell you a little bit about our health clinic there. Is basically Mountain View Health Services is a 501c3 nonprofit, started recently. You may not know about it, so that's why I want to tell you that it was recently started, August of 2020, specifically to create a permanent healthcare clinic for the Mountain View community. And we want to be a comprehensive healthcare center involving primary care center, urgent care center, a counseling center, and have on board oversight by a psychiatrist. We'll have licensed physicians and licensed counselors, and we want to become a permanent part of the Mountain View community. So our proposal was for capacity building and to take over the operations of Mountain View Urgent Care. So the transition is underway, and we are on June 1st going to be basically operating that center as a nonprofit and building up our capacity to serve the community. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And you can find more information on our website at mtvhs.org.
Thank you.
mtvhs.org. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you from Mr. Weddleton.
Thanks. I appreciate your offering to give us tours, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to take advantage. Next time I have a sore throat or something. So I'm curious, a couple questions. One is, so you're taking over this urgent care. What happened to them?
Actually, I started the urgent care in 2018. I'm transferring that to basically as some sort of a donation. Our lawyers and accountants have to work out all the details, so there's no benefit or no big liability on either side. But basically, the nonprofit board has basically approved the taking over of Mountain View Urgent Care.
Okay, so you were urgent care, and now you're transforming the business.
Yes.
Okay.
I started Mountain View Urgent Care in August 2018, and we gathered together a team of great people, and we had the vision for a permanent health center. We always thought we were going to start maybe a nonprofit, but the time was right in August, and we gathered together a board, and they have a great can-do attitude, and we went for it.
Okay, good. One more. So, thank you. And so I look at this, most of this request is for operating funds, a full-time physician, part-time physician, 2 counselors, and so on, which all sounds good, but This is one-time money, probably. I mean, are
Right,
you
this is-
geared up for long-term?
Right, yes, we have a board, we've onboarded an accountant, we have legal advice, we have a part-time bookkeeper who's actually very good, and we have a full staff already. We're overstaffed in anticipation of bringing on new doctors. We've actually hired on just recently two part-time doctors, and we have we're fully staffed as far as the support staff goes. I just today said if we get this money, we have a part-time counselor who works there. I just pay him. He can't bill Medicaid because he doesn't have a psychiatrist over him. So we just see the patients and it comes out of our funds. So if we get the money, we'll hire him full-time. We'll hire a psychiatrist to oversee him, and we'll hire these doctors full-time if we can, if they're willing to. And we'll just go from there. We also have a contracted fundraiser. So this is a capacity building grant. We're going to get our foot moving in the right direction, which we have for these last 2 years, if you look at our Mountain View Urgent Care website. And then we're just going to build from there, and that's what this is for. It's not going to fully fund these positions. So we're going to be working. We're going to be working and generating funds and bringing the funds in, and we're going to be asking for donations from the community as well.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel.
Hi, I'm on the other side, on your right. Hi, thanks for coming. Can you tell us a little bit about your operations during COVID, kind of the effect of COVID on your operations and the demand for your services in the Mountain View area, please?
Sure, absolutely. In March.
And can you really get closer to the mic? I'm hard of hearing already.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure, in March we saw a big drop in our visits. In-person visits went down to hardly any. And then we started to see a lot of testing, people coming in for testing, especially people who needed to talk to a doctor but didn't have insurance. So the free testing sites were fine because you could go get a free test and you could get your result. If your employer took that result and allowed you to go back to work, that was fine. But if they didn't, they needed a doctor's note, someone to say, okay, yeah, you meet the guidelines, you're not sick any longer, please, they needed medical clearance. And they also needed advice, and that's something that if they were negative, they didn't get advice. If you're positive, you got advice from the nurses who, called all the people that were positive. But if you're negative and you're still sick, and then you're wondering, well, do I need to get another test, or can I go back to work? Should I just stay home until I'm completely better? All those questions had to be answered by someone. And so we saw a lot of those people. We gave a lot of free care out for that purpose, just to answer questions. And then we tried to transition to video calls, which a lot of doctors did, and saw a lot of drop-offs there with nobody really wanting to do that. Not too many people anyway. And then now it's starting to come back.
Great. Just a quick follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair. Is the folks who came for that advice and that need, are they from typically the nearby area?
Yeah. Everyone came to us because we were giving free care.
I see.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a lot of people from the area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
for being here.
Great. Thanks so much. And just a reminder for folks on the phone, please make sure that you are muted. We got a little bit of feedback there. Welcome.
My name is Brittany Tompkins, for the record, and I'm here to urge the Assembly and Acting Mayor to table these proposed allocations until we have more information on how a good amount of these organizations were actually affected by COVID-19 shutdown. I'd also urge the Assembly to not rush into anything just because the new administration is about to be certified. There are many of the items on this list that concerns me. There's also many items that I agree with. So I will just highlight a few of them that concern me. $25,000 are available for the library to provide homeschooling materials including homeschool curriculum reading lists, educational books, DVDs, and STEM kits. As a homeschooling family, through our charter, we already have that, and the library has that already. $40,000 available to the library to purchase 100 MiFis that support low-income customers through 2022. And my question is, does that include the monthly cost of Wi-Fi, of the MiFi, or is that just the actual purchase of the device? $130,000 available to the library to create an entrepreneurial space at the library. This location will have a special keying system to allow for entrance, even if the library is closed. This, to me, is unnecessary. I would call an entrepreneurial space your living room. And if you want to tell me that they don't have Wi-Fi, well, they can pick up a MiFi at the library. $800,000 to make available for Parks and Rec to provide a permit fee relief for the remainder of 2021. I assume that fee would fall back on the taxpayer. You can answer that question. What about the small business property tax relief? I see it's about $30,000 in this list. $30,000 available for business personal property tax relief to eligible taxpayers financially impacted by the government orders as an economic stimulus measure to respond to COVID-19 public health emergency. Only $30,000, but $800,000 for an entrepreneurial space in the library. $3.5 million available to the Parks and Rec for beetle kill. This isn't COVID related, and this should have been in the general budget for Anchorage area. So this doesn't have to do with COVID funds. $45,000 for COVID-aware workstations at the library. I mean, workers went to work every day at every store here, and they worked with a COVID-aware station. I don't know if it cost $45,000 for them, and how many workstations is that going to cover? 2, 3 in the library? These allocations should be directly related to the COVID-19 shutdowns, and many are just not. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you, ma'am, from Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, maybe that's out of order, but I just want to clarify, that was a typo with that $30,000 for the property tax thing. It should be $500,000, and that's corrected in the S version.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Welcome.
Dustin Darden, D-U-S-T-I-N-D-A-R-D-E-N. So when you open up this document here, it states that the American Rescue Plan Act is a $1.9 trillion relief bill. I would recommend you amend this proposal to fully write what 1.9 trillion includes. To write 1.9 trillion, that would include a 1, a 9, 2 zeros, followed by 3 zeros, an additional 3 zeros, on top of 3 zeros, a period, and then 2 zeros. That's a considerable amount of money that the United States Congress, along with the illegally elected president, has signed into act. I will be requesting a portion of this $1,900,000,000, how it should be written. My request will be to cover a public service announcement that the majority of this municipal assembly voted for late last week. You voted as a majority to end the mask mandates in public spaces in these municipality of Anchorage. Through the chair, respectfully, the municipal chambers is a public place. To the best of my knowledge, respectfully through the chair, you made a rule.
Sorry, Mr. Darden, can you please stay on topic? There will be opportunity during audience participation if you want to speak to this issue, but if you can please stay on topic with the issue we have.
Respectfully through the chair, this is directly related to my request of the portion of the $1,009,000,000 that's been advocated by the federal government. My public service announcement that will allocate from this money will educate the people as to the farce of these masks and how they're being used as a control mechanism to inject people with a known biological warfare agent.
Sorry, Mr. Darden, to interrupt again, but you will have an opportunity during audience participation if you'd like to speak on masks.
Respectfully, through the chair.
I will go ahead and continue your time. That's going to be the last warning I give, so I'm going to ask you, you have 38 seconds left to use your last few seconds to speak to the item before us. Thank you.
Respectfully, through the chair, the portion of the $1.9 trillion, which is actually $1,009 billion, what I'm going to be asking for my public service announcement, is going to be to warn to those not to get this biological warfare injection into their arms. And to your controllers, those who put you into power through the chair respectfully, we are watching you. And we know that you, through the chair respectfully, are not calling the shots. But the patriots in this country are not going to stand for it.
All right, your time is up. Thank you. Welcome.
Is the mic on? You guys hear me? My name is Eric Connick. I'm the general manager at Lithia Kia, and I appreciate all your time. It's been a while since I've been here. The last time I was here, I had like 4 or 5 cars burnt to the ground, and you were kind enough to call me, and a couple of you guys called me, and I don't know if they were related or not, but it's a little nerve-wracking coming up here. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully you'll hear me out. Here's the deal. I was not going to talk today. I came down here because I heard that they busted loose $51 million, and maybe there's some political reason why we would spend the money before Dave got in the office or whatever the case may be. And to me, I don't care if we give money to a baseball team. I don't care if we give money to a casino. I do care, but what I care about is that the people had some input or felt like they had some input on where that money went. And I think for me, when this got busted loose just a couple days ago, and we haven't really had a discussion about it, we're voting for school board seats and judges. I'll be honest with you, I don't know half of them. I check the box sometimes. I know the mayor, and I know who I wanted to vote for there, but it seems to me that I think the public should have some more say on how we spend this money, and that's, I think, a concern for me. Obviously, I have a business in Midtown. My fear is that we may fast track something that the public didn't have any input on. I'm grumpy, I'm tired, I don't want to be here, but I think as quickly as we can wait to certify the election till May 25th, I think we could wait to vote on this till at least May 25th, so maybe some more Alaskans or more Anchorage residents that came down here could put some input in on the topics that, and again, I don't know who came up with this. I don't know if it was, well, she's not here, the mayor who did the input on this. I don't know if it was the body, the assembly. I don't know who it was. But I think that I would like to know, whose idea was this? Who came up with the way we spent the money? And who decided that was a good plan? Was Anchorage involved or not? I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. But I think that's very, very important. Raising teenagers is tough. And I like to shoot from the hip. Well, I've learned my lesson a lot about shooting from the hip. And as a general manager, and I stated this months ago, it seems to me that we make better decisions when we slow down. When we slow down and we really figure it out and we try to dissect really what we're trying to accomplish. So that way when you guys and you ladies leave this seat, you feel like Anchorage was a better place. I've never in my life looked in my rearview mirror heading out past Fort Rich towards the valley and said, thank God I'm leaving Anchorage.
Thank you.
Until today.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Christine Hill, and I'm here to say ditto what this gentleman said right before me. You need to slow down. It's not transparent. It's not fair. This all came out of the blue. I can see there a lot of work has been put into it, but we were not involved in that. And also I saw it as an opportunity tonight as far as, I guess, in asking for money. So I can say that Dwayne's Antique Market, which is located at 1233 East 76th Avenue, is a lovely location where people feel really good when they leave, even if they buy something or not. They really like the experience. I could say the same for Bell's Nursery. We're not a nonprofit organization, so I guess I won't be asking for money tonight, but yes, we have suffered through this COVID. But on that note, I did think of another organization who has had to suffer because of them not being able to have events and be able to raise money, and that would be the Alaska Republican Party, and I think that they are, in fact, nonprofit. I'm not speaking for them. I'm just observing and thinking of the opportunity perhaps one can take as far as in getting money. I know that this is a nonpartisan body, but that is not true, and then people elevate themselves saying, well, I'm nonpartisan, and if you watch and see what they do and say, that is malarkey. That is not true. So I'm saying all these things in jest, of course. I do not represent the Republican Party. I do implore you to take more time and listen to the public, give them an opportunity to know what's going on, how much money you intend to spend, and have more input. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Irene Queetnow again. I have been to several of the work sessions, and I want to thank you for having some in the evening. But yesterday was the first time this plan was given to me as a public person, as being part of the public. The plan that spells out how much each program or organization is getting. And so I agree with everybody who spoke. There has not been enough time to look through the individual stuff and comment on it. And as far as I know, because it says when tendered, that means you do not have the money yet. So there is no rush to really vote on that tonight or tomorrow. So I would also urge you to postpone so that we as a public can read through this big list of what you have given us, not just 5 minutes before the meeting, but a little bit more in depth. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Eugene Carl Haberman, 43 years Alaska resident, 20 of those years Anchorage resident, currently Valley resident. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, the decision made by the governing body is more likely to public interest. As you know, I clue into exactly how you do your process. There were a lot of errors in what was said by the public here as when this was presented. For the record, Wednesday night, last Wednesday, you had a regular meeting. This item was laid on the table before the end of the meeting, and it was understood that there'd be a work session and town hall meeting yesterday, and it was going to be a public hearing tonight. That was fast-tracked, but that's how this item was brought before the public correctly. Respectfully, not correctly, though. Now let's get on this thing. You have part of the public hearing, but what has not been laid on the table is AR number 2021-167S. That was put over there just a few minutes before the start of this meeting. This is an S version. You've yet to lay it on the table. That should have been done at the meeting. And how can you have a public hearing when you have not even laid on the table this item? For the record, I checked the website. It doesn't exist yet. So the only people who could see this document, S version, are in this room. A few copies, not enough for everyone in this room, but the fact is, how do you expect people to connect? With all due respect, this is more of the same. I would like to talk about other things dealing with this COVID scenario and the proposals, but my role is known for the public, elected officials, as process, a fairness of the opportunity for the public to have a conversation. And you're talking about $51 million approximately, and how do you expect the public to be able to digest this, and yourselves able to digest this? And also a warning. You should have a continued public hearing, But don't patch this up by making decisions on this thing and then calling for a second public hearing. You need to not make decisions on this item unless you're talking about continued public hearing, and not come and say, okay, we're going to make decisions now, and then go back and we'll have a second public hearing of what you already done. You need to stop in its tracks. And also remind you, remember this room was filled with people, several days, people concerned about how money was spent on COVID and CARES Act money. And you were exhausted, I was exhausted, but the fact is, this has an appearance of fast track to prevent a fair conversation with the people before you make that decision. Thank you very much, with 4 seconds to spare.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Borchert, and I'm here to say I'd like you to postpone voting on this. This just stinks. I don't know how else to put it. What are you in such a rush for? And the fact that we will probably have a new mayor, with a different mindset, and have an unelected mayor do what she's doing, and you all say it's okay, you're not being transparent. And this has been a problem for a long time, your lack of transparency, and you're just trying to sneak this by. Please put it not on the table, but postpone it and have some public hearings. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Melinda Gant from Anchorage Community Development Authority, Acting Executive Director. Assembly members, I'm here today first and foremost to graciously say thank you for your consideration of the $2 million allocation to ACDA. This suggested allocation, however, will not make ACDA whole. As I've updated the majority of Assembly members, when the shutdown of our city occurred March of 2020, ACDA was impacted by immediate loss of parking revenue, the loss of 3 long-term leases, and unexpected expenses that were associated with lack of activity in downtown Anchorage that created damage to our properties. More importantly, ACDA could not qualify for COVID or PP money. We are a quasi-government agency for the municipality of Anchorage. Before the pandemic, ACDA had 47 working staff. We conducted several layoffs beginning March of 2020, and at our lowest, we had 16 staff, and some were part-time. We reviewed our expenses and made substantial cuts from 40 to 60% of our contracts. With all these reductions, we are still set to run out of cash by July of 2021. Today, we have 21 staff working full-time. Several of us are wearing 2 hats of responsibility, including myself. This is not sustaining due to the tick-up of parking usage and slow opening that we see today in downtown Anchorage. We know that we need to hire 8 additional staff and 1 executive director immediately. This $2 million will allow us to do this along with moving forward with our annual repairs that are much needed today. We have run preliminary numbers through the end of 2022 that includes the $2 million allocation that has been set aside for ACDA. With this allocation, it will make us whole until only July of 2022, and then we will be back again where we are today. Our original ask to MOA and to the Assembly members was for $4 million. This $4 million will cover our loss of revenue of $3.3 million for 2020, and to cover our essential workers that included janitorial, security, dispatch, and maintenance of $1.4 million. We have taken the steps to adjust our 2021 budget 2 times with our board, which included reduction of personnel through the end of 2021, reduction of expenses, freezes, and removal of cash donations. We recognize that it is expected that improvements will be seen. However, it is not expected that we will experience 2019 revenue numbers. Lastly, please note that our request is not for upgrades, new projects, an expansion of our program, funding for new positions, or new equipment. This funding request is to ensure that ACDA is made financially whole again. I leave you with this thought that a prior executive director expressed to the Anchorage Assembly during 2008. ACDA needs to be healthy enough financially so that parking rates in Anchorage stay reasonable.
Thank you. Welcome.
Rachel Colvard, representing myself. I'm going to echo what a lot of other people said, and that if we're only getting this out yesterday, and I did listen to some of the work session yesterday, and Eugene was actually right. Like, we need more time to look this over and comment on this. To release it yesterday, expect us to read it in one night, and then to quickly pass it through today is bunk. This is not the way to do things. You know that there's going to be an administration change. You have failed to disappoint in making this theatrical this entire last year. I don't hold much hope, but I hope you'll wait until we have like a new mayor. Even as Eugene says, he doesn't even live here, but he invests his time in us anyway. You know, we need to take more time with this. And as some of the other people have said, you know, it's fine to give money to baseball teams and things that should have been handled in the regular budget, like spruce beetle kill. I'm so disappointed. This isn't how we should be doing this. We've got like 300,000 people here, and this is the best we can do. Postpone this. Let the city calm down. Let the inflammation calm down a little bit. We can go back to having a real conversation with each other, to being productive, to making good decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Members of the Assembly, thank you for allowing time tonight for public testimony. My name is Amanda Mativier, and I am the Associate Director of the Alaska Child Welfare Academy and co-founder of the nonprofit Facing Foster Care in Alaska. I'm hoping that you will support a proposal for a social media and ad campaign to recruit foster families. A proposal that really can't wait because children and families have been suffering the entire pandemic. I spent 3 years in foster care myself before aging out of the system. As soon as I aged out of the system, I signed up to be a foster parent and have been for the last 13 years to teens. Since COVID has hit, Alaska has lost 171 foster homes. We have 3,000 children and youth in foster care statewide, and the Office of Children's Services was already struggling to find families. When COVID hit, foster families closed their licenses, and a number have gone on hold, and that is a number we can't even track because they're afraid of infection, challenges with homeschooling, everything that came along with our communities closing. Half of the children who are in the foster care system in our state reside in Anchorage. Children from around the state who come into the foster care system land in Anchorage because of lack of homes in their communities. We've lost about 30 foster homes in Anchorage in the last year, and I've seen more teenagers at Covenant House than I have ever experienced in the last 18 years that I've been working with young people transitioning out of foster care. We hope to be able to put a call to action out to the community. I've lived in Anchorage most of my life, and I know when you ask the community to step up, they do. We want to let people know that there's a need for foster care. There's a need for people to support children, to support sibling groups, and more importantly, to support teenagers who are the hardest to place. I'll just close with, as I was preparing to come here today, I wasn't sure if I was going to testify or not. I was just going to be available for questions, and I still can be, or I can answer via email after this. One of our young people texted me, and she is currently waiting for a foster home. No homes available. Just lingering. She's actually in the hospital, so the hospital is holding her. And if she can't find a foster home, she's going to go to Covenant House.
in the next several days. So she asked us to put a post out on social media. So we posted on our Facebook at the request of a teenager who is looking for a family. So I know a lot of people want you to wait on making decisions about this funding, but we have young people and families across our state who need this now and can't wait. So thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you from Ms. Allard.
Thank you. I was looking at your program, and I did have some questions, and I think it's a great program. But my question is, how are you guys going to try to maneuver, I think, what was it, 200,000? Can you give me some insight on how the media is going to work and what avenues you're going to use to help those children?
I could send you a more, if it's helpful, formal breakdown of what we want to do in terms of budget after this. We want to really, we want to create ads first to go out through TV, so commercial ads to run on TV, radio, but try to keep costs to a minimum in the development of those and spend more money on airtime, basically. And then also utilize social media to be able to boost posts. And there's ways like through Facebook and other social media platforms that you can target certain audiences as well.
Are we going to be able to continue to access those families that kind of took a step back because of COVID? Are you guys going to try to reach out to them again?
Our hope is that if they see the call to the community, that maybe they'll reactivate their license, they'll sign up again to be able to take in children again, or people who have been on the fence and have been thinking about it will, make a call and take the next step to be able to do it as well.
Chair, just one last thing. Could you go ahead and just send us all a courtesy email about the details a little bit more? Those are things that I'm having a hard time with because we have this plan in front of us, but I don't see all the details.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Good evening. Through the chair, my name is Amanda Moser, and I am the Executive Director of the Anchorage Downtown Partnership. We are a nonprofit committed to a clean, safe, and vital downtown Anchorage. A strong downtown is critical to a successful Anchorage, and I want to stress the importance of supporting downtown with these funds. When you provide for downtown, you have returns on investment, and it benefits the entire municipality of Anchorage because downtown belongs to everyone. Despite its relatively small share of Anchorage's overall geography, our downtown delivers a significant economic and community impact to both our city and all of Alaska. As the literal and figurative heart of Anchorage, our downtown represents and welcomes all residents, employees, and visitors from all walks of life. Our downtown has borne the brunt of the pandemic, from the hospitality industry closures and restrictions, the disruption of the cruise ship season in 2020 and 2021, and the cancellation of the ceremonial start of the Iditarod, which was a significant day for our downtown, as well as the work from home restrictions that have had significant impacts. Our team supports a clean, safe, and vital downtown. Our ambassadors patrol the 120 blocks of the Downtown Improvement District, addressing maintenance and security issues. We remove the snow in the winter, and we remove trash and graffiti in the summer. Every day, our team encounters persons experiencing mental health crisis, substance abuse disorder, and persons experiencing homelessness. We partner with the Anchorage Police Department, the Anchorage Safety Patrol, the Covenant House, and other social service providers to work in collaboration and provide assistance. In 2014, Anchorage Downtown Partnership worked with UAA's Justice Center, and we have data that demonstrates that the more you activate your public spaces, it disrupts nefarious activities that happen in these spaces. Our team is committed to providing opportunities for our community to connect as we move forward. We have activation planned for our public spaces for 7 days a week, from story time and live music in Pratt Park to hip-hop, salsa, Zumba, and bar classes, as well as live music in Town Square Park. Research shows when people come to downtown for events, they are likely to spend money at our brick and mortars. And when you spend money at a local business, 40 to 60 cents on each dollar stays in the community, supporting our friends, family, and neighbors. Downtown has struggled because our institutions, including the Performing Arts Center and Museum, have been closed. We've struggled because folks have been working from home and they're not coming downtown in the morning and buying coffee. The roadmap to a vital and safe Anchorage has identified downtown as one of the core areas of focus of activating downtown and getting people there, and that is what we hope to do with this funding.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Oh, so I was getting to see if you had anything else you wanted to finish with, Ms. Moser, and also if there is sort of a pressing need, sort of is time a factor for what you're asking for?
Yeah, I think that there's benefit to getting the money directly out to these organizations. I know that our team is focused on finding ways to bring folks downtown this summer to support our downtown restaurants, to support our downtown shops, and to provide opportunities for community connection. And so some of the funding that we've requested is for summer activations, which will hopefully start in the beginning of June.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Rosalind Casey, R-O-S-E-L-Y-N-N-C-A-C-Y. I'm here representing the Adult Learning Center in support of the ALC High School Completion Scholarship Fund that was submitted by Principal Dr. Elizabeth Kane. The Adult Learning Center is the only accredited high school completion program for adults in Alaska. With COVID, I'm sure everybody knows students in high school who have not been able to learn at home as well as they would under other circumstances. Many have lost credits. In the past, I've seen people, one girl that said, I didn't get my high school diploma because I hated my government teacher and I refused to take the final exam. Now that I have a daughter, I want to get it. The Adult Learning Center allows people to capture the credits they learned throughout their whole life and take the ones that they don't need and get an accredited high school diploma. Many of those who have lost their job in the hospitality programs, many small business owners, and many others are going to need a high school diploma in order to get a new job, or at least one that they can support themselves on that pays more than unemployment. The homeless services, when you talk to people that are homeless, many of them do not have a high school diploma. Many others who do not have health insurance and are more heavily affected by COVID do not have a high school diploma. And up until March, when COVID hit, I used to go to the correctional center and tutor students, some of them that were there not because of any crime, but because they didn't have any other place to go. And we worked primarily on algebra and other classes they needed to obtain a high school diploma. So many of these people need a new start right now to get their diploma. And I have a question for you. Did you get this proposal? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a question from you from Ms. Zolotel.
Hi, thank you for coming to testify. To answer your question, no, I have not seen this proposal. And I was just going through our paperwork here, and I didn't see it mentioned. So I was going to actually ask you if you had seen it in our documents, and you could direct me.
No, I do taxes in my other life, and so at midnight, I started looking at things, and I've been going through the proposal, and I have not found it.
Okay, do you have a copy of your proposal right there, or were those just your notes tonight?
These are my notes, but I can email it to you.
Please do so. we can make sure that you can get it emailed over to all members. That would be really helpful.
And I thought Mr. Assemblyman Weddleton said you had seen it?
Yeah, I did, and I had a little back and forth with the
Oh, okay. Thanks.
person who runs it. It
Thank
was
you very
several
We'll get
weeks
you the
ago.
contact. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? And then if anyone else would like to speak, please line up in the middle aisle, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Like a couple of others, I had not planned on speaking tonight, but after hearing...
Sorry for interrupting. Could you state your name for the record,
please?
please?
I'm sorry. Michael Savitt. Like a couple of other people who have expressed a couple of concerns, one, the correct version of this just came out, so it's not been tabled. You really can't proceed on it, but that may or may not make a difference. I'm listening, though, to a lot of people come up here, and some are in this proposal to get funds, maybe not as much as they want. Others may not be in here and are asking for funds. A lot of people need money. There's been a lot going on. If this really has just come out in the last day or two, and the public has not had any input on this, the public may want you to go above and beyond what is there in other programs. May or may not be possible, but the public, after all, should have a say in what's going on here. I'm reminded of $9 million that was spent recently on Golden Lion. That's what percentage of the 51 million? I don't want to digress too much here, though. The other thing is you've got a new administration coming in. It's unfair to them to rush something through that you don't have to rush through. You also compliment the Assembly for a change. You've also seemed to be paying attention to the people who have come in to speak, which is nice to see. I would like to suggest to you that since you don't have the $51 million yet, you can't spend it yet. You can allocate, but there's time to do that just as there's time to spend it. There is no rush here unless you think you can't get it through the next administration, whoever that may turn out to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, public testimony is closed. So there's a few things that I'd like us to do, so let me just describe these things in order. So first, the clerk advises me that we will need a motion to incorporate the S version into our agenda. It is supplemental, so we don't need to lay it on the table, but we do need that motion to incorporate. After that, then we can do the regular motion to approve the S version. After that, I want us to go through our amendments. And then after that, if there are any motions that members would like to make to postpone or any other such motions, I would think it would be appropriate to do at that point. So, first, I need a motion to incorporate AR number 2021-167S.
Move to incorporate.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Okay, seeing none, that motion is approved. That item is incorporated. So next, do I have what is the will of the body?
Move to approve the S version.
Second.
Moved and seconded. My apologies, I'm moving a little bit too quickly. So Mr. Perez-Padilla, are you on the phone with us? And then Ms. LaFrance, are you on the phone with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Yeah.
Ms. LaFrance, on the motion to incorporate AR 2021-167S, AR 10-2021A, and the attachment, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. So I think that will reflect that vote to incorporate was approved 9-0. Okay, so then we now have this laid, the S version motion to approve on the floor. Mr. Weddleton, did you want to speak before we did the amendments?
Yeah, I'd like to move to bifurcate sections 1 through 15 and 34A and 16 to 41.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to that?
Actually, Mr. Chair, can that be restated one more time, please?
Sure. I'd move to bifurcate sections 1 through 15 and 34.A and sections 16 through 41.
Nope. Would you like to speak to it, Mr. Weddleton?
Yeah, I would happy to. What this does is takes the continuation programs, which are projects that we've already approved, we've supported, and this just finishes off the waiting list. It also includes the technical assistance grants, which I think need to get out the door right away. Those are, groups that would help businesses and nonprofits and individuals take advantage of the federal and state programs, and we don't want to delay on that at all. 34A is the funding for the Girdwood Fire and Rescue, which is something that we committed to doing when we did the first quarter budget revisions. So, those are, so basically I'm pulling out the things that are either commitments already or those technical assistance that really need to happen right away. And then my hope would be on the other items to continue the public hearing until June 8th, and sometime before then have a work session where we could go through various amendments. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, thanks. Ms. Kennedy on the motion to bifurcate?
Thank you. Actually, I was just kind of hoping for a point of clarification, or I don't know if it's maybe a point of information, but can we get up the S version on OnBase, or are we not able to actually pull that up on our screens right now? Thank you.
I don't believe the S version was uploaded onto OnBase, but you should have a paper copy of it.
I do. Thank you.
Did you have anything further, Ms. Kennedy?
Actually, I will just comment that yes, I would support a yes vote on this motion to bifurcate for the reasons that Mr. Weddleton already brought up, and we can talk more about those specific, the bifurcation itself once we actually make the motion, or hopefully pass the motion to bifurcate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. So I will likely be voting no on the motion to bifurcate. If we do, as a body, approve this motion, I would like us to take, after approval, to take a few minutes to have the administration weigh in on any other items that are particularly important and need to be approved today. I'm not convinced that the items laid out by Mr. Weddleton are the only items that are critically important for us to approve today, which is why I'll be voting no. Thank you. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comments are very similar to those of the chairs about which items were selected. I think, from the areas in which I spend a lot of time on, I would be very concerned about the Sullivan decompression of that population if we were to delay that work by even weeks. And frankly, I'm quite moved by the request to recruit foster families now. when we have a youth sitting in a hospital. So I think the urgency to these programs would have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and categorizing them. And we don't have a well-defined approach, I think, in this bifurcation motion to what constitutes urgency. I know there are several items in here, particularly related to COVID effects around either job, retraining, and housing and homelessness that are all interrelated. And the faster that work gets done, the faster we decompress the mass care, which has been a goal and priority of this body. So for that reason, I'm going to have to vote against the motion to bifurcate and would want to see something much more refined. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Allard.
Thank you, Chair. Can we add a line to John's bifurcate? So if we do so, I would like to add line 25. That is for the media blitz for the foster children.
So you could make an amendment to the amendment to add that to the motion we have before us.
Okay, then I would like to make an amendment to the amendment to add line 25 to the bifurcate. Going down everything else, it looks like I don't see the other urgencies, and I need much more time to vet all these issues. So I would be in favor of the bifurcate. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. So, Mr. Peterson, did you want to speak to this new motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would actually like to add number 36 to that motion as well.
Yeah.
It's the Alaska Baseball League teams are trying to get organized to start their season, and by the 8th of June, the players will already be here. As of right now, they didn't operate last year. They have no money coming in until games start. And this is sort of seed money to get them up and operating. And I believe a delay would have a negative consequence. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess as the chair, the guidance I will give to the body, this goes to the point that I made earlier, that there is going to be a lot of different judgment calls of what needs to be approved now. So, we can do one of two things. We could take a 10-minute break now, or however long we need, and refine this motion that assumes that the motion will eventually be approved, or we can just take a vote on the motion, and if it is approved, then we can take a break and reconsider the motion to further refine it if that is the will of the body. There's no clean way to do this tonight, unfortunately. So thank you, Mr. Peterson. I'll go next to... We can. It's already an amendment to the amendment, yeah. So if you would like to make that motion after we're done dealing with Ms. Allard's motion, I will come back to you to entertain that, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Constant?
I don't understand. Yeah, the other member doesn't see why the project that I had on the list is a priority, and you don't see why mine is a priority, and all of a sudden we're back to ground zero, because I have a whole slate that I think are just as important and timely as the rest. And so I think that this approach it just appears kind of selfish to me. And I hope that we can, maybe the chair's proposal is, I don't know how we do that, when we get this done and we kind of walk through it. We are here in an open meeting, and it's just got to be done in front of this microphone. And so I don't think it's wise or supportable. I think that the only bifurcation we should do is the potential of any conflicts.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Weddleton.
Well, thanks. I agree. Every single thing on here needs to be done yesterday. They're critical. Postponing for each individual project here makes no sense whatsoever. But there's also thousands of others that demand to be on this list, have to be done. This is such a paltry list. So little money, $50 million for the stuff we need desperately. And we heard ACDA, which is so important to downtown, wants at least $4 million just to get through the year. And we got for $2 million. This is nothing. So we need to do this yesterday, but it would be wrong. And my true thing, I will vote no if this whole thing goes as it is, because we didn't show it yesterday, it was shown last week, and we have had 4 work sessions, 3 town halls with many people involved, hundreds of emails. So those who are don't think it came out yesterday, you weren't paying attention. Sorry about that. So we move on. We have work to do, whether you're paying attention or not. But that remains. We saw this a week ago. You see all the amendments here, which barely scratched the surface because there are thousands of other groups that demand being on this list. We have missed some completely. We need to slow down. And if you want, let's slow down, make it on the 25th then, and help the baseball league. But we should be more careful. Now, I chose the first 10 because we have approved those and we've been paying those, and we are simply continuing things that we already approved. These people were expecting this, and it seems legit to put on there. If you want to stop there and not do technical assistance, I suppose that's fine. I know, but each of these demands yesterday, but we would be wrong to do it. We need to take some time, and we've got at least 10 amendments here because we saw this to work on, a week ago, and we could have 10 more if we put this off till tomorrow. So we should wait, at least wait till our next meeting on the 25th. Let's have a work session on Friday, work through these amendments, and see if we can add the adult group and any of the other variety of people who have emailed us since they saw this when it was released a week ago and have been emailing us saying, what about us? And they've been ignored. So we would be wrong to spend this on what we've got in front of us now, as important as everything is on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad John mentioned the work sessions and the public hearings and the long process that got us here. I mean, I was hoping that we would pass a resolution with a significant amount of money in late March or early April. That was our original time frame. And I got to echo what some of the other colleagues have said about other critical programs on here. Things like Choosing Our Roots, for example, the $500,000 there. We know that there are youth right now experiencing homelessness that need those facilities ASAP. And so I appreciate what John is saying, but I think it's sort of making perfect the enemy of the good. And yeah, I just don't think that the bifurcation motion as it stands is something I could support. And so I'm going to vote against the bifurcation motion. I hope that we can pass this tonight. I hope that we can, my priorities were what he was talking about. I wanted to get money on the street with the small business grants. I wanted to get money on the street with the voucher program. And we can still get that relief money out quickly. But one of the central critiques of what we did with the CARES Act, there were a lot of bad faith arguments made about that, there was no transparency when we had work session after work session, hearing after hearing after hearing, and still people made that same accusation. But the accusation that was true and it stuck was it took us too long to get that money out. It really did. We took too long to pass it and took way too long to administer. And so I want to get this money into the hands of people of Anchorage quickly. And so I'll be voting against the motion to bifurcate. And I'll be voting for the main package if we get the opportunity to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really just have a question in terms of the probability or practicality of actually getting any of this money out on the street, because we don't have a dime yet. And that, to me, is kind of problematic when everybody here who thinks that this might pass today are going to get a check tomorrow, and that's not true. So I was hoping that I could just ask the administration really what kind of a timeline they believe that they're working with in terms of when could that first dollar possibly go out and be in anyone's hands once we actually get funding. Because as Mr. Dunbar said, that was the biggest complaint, was how long everything took. And that wasn't necessarily our problem. It was just the mechanisms by which we had to work with. And so for the public to say they need something yesterday, that timeline isn't going to work. So can we get an answer from the administration in regard to potentially when they think any of this money could possibly be out the door and on the street? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Who from the administration can respond?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, Assembly Member Kennedy. We fully expect, based on the application and the kind of communication that we have received back from the Treasury Department, we fully expect that the funds will be deposited into our account this week. We have also already jump-started a portion of our finance team, both in finance and OMB, to essentially be ready to create all of the back-end, kind of IOs and other information that we need in our back end to have that completely done, provided this passes tonight, of every single one of these items this week, which would mean that starting probably early next week, we will start pushing money out into the community, provided that we get signed grant agreements back as quickly as possible. So our expectation and our plan is to start pushing this money out as early as next week.
Thank you, Mr. Bockelstead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Allard.
Thank you, Chair. So Mr. Dunbar brought up a very good point in regards to, I guess it would be line item number 29, choosing our routes. And this is one of the line items that I don't quite understand. So are we buying a $500,000 house? And who's going to own it? Is the MOA going to end up taking care of it? Are we going to pay the property taxes on it? And then it continues to say construction of rehabilitation for property and ready use and any means necessary. So these are questions that still have to be answered and confirmed on how all these are going to work. And there's myriad of projects here. And I agree that we have had our work sessions, we've had our town halls, and the public is kind of starting to pick up on it, but I don't want to make the same mistake we did last time. I think we should take our time, reevaluate some of these other ones, and I would say that I'm not trying to be selfish on which ones go forward, because I will say that the media blitz for the foster homes, not even my project, didn't bring that forward, somebody else did, but I want to support that. I'm willing to put the Chamber of Commerce. I'm willing to put other things on the back burner, the MAC Center. I'm willing to support other concerns of things that are going to be immediate to happen so that we could get this passed. But if I can't vet all these items, then I'm going to have to be a solid no as well. So I just want everybody to take into consideration, if we're going to push the funds out, we can't push it all out at one time anyways. We're going to have to push it out as they come in. So why not just do those line items that we've mentioned? If another member has an item that they say, well, this is important to me, bring it up. Let's put it in there. And then maybe 20 of the items stay out. Let's work as a team and do it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. We're sitting here right now doing it right now. So let's compromise a little bit.
Thank you. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. And my comment about being selfish was reflected at myself as much as anyone else, because I have my projects that I think are very valuable, and this puts me in a position where I feel like it's suddenly you versus me, and that's not how we should be landing this. And so that, I want to be really clear, I wasn't pointing at anybody and trying to call anybody anything. And so second to that, Mr. Waddleton, I will say that we have had weeks and months of process on this conversation, as you identified, and the argument that we need to hear more so we can have more projects on the table because there are other interests, that is an infinite loop that ends up to zero. And we have, in my opinion, had a broad conversation with the public. We've heard tons of different proposals come at us. And so to me, it's the opposite argument that prevails, that is at some point we have to make the decision and go. And otherwise we would dilute everything to nothing.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotil, and then I'd like us to vote.
Sure, thank you. With the additional projects that may not be on this list, I think it's important to remember this is the first tranche of these funds. There will be another tranche of these funds. And this is a lot of how we had to juggle the requests and the great need when we received the CARES Act funds. We couldn't meet all of the need. And we can also work with our state partners moving forward for some of these for some of the projects that don't get funded by us. They have considerable funds coming their way as well. So I don't feel like this is the only opportunity if there isn't a critical project on this list. I agree. this money won't meet all of the need, but it's a good start, and the urgency, I think, is real to move these funds out into the community. I think that's generally the expectation, that these funds get out to get doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I wanted to also just briefly mention one other thing we learned from the CARES Act experience, which was, so we ended up passing probably 7 or 8 resolutions when it was all said and done, piecemealing out different programs. You know, it was bifurcated, not intentionally. We had small business, and we had nonprofits, we had obviously the homeless issue, we had another large omnibus, we had 3 more small business resolutions, and ultimately what happened was the public became very confused, and I would say some folks even promoted that confusion about what we actually funded and what we didn't. And there's still misperceptions in the public about, oh, none of that money went to small business because it wasn't comprehensive. And what I like about this is it's everything all at once. It's the culmination of several months of work, and it's everything all at once. And I think it will reduce some of the confusion that we saw over the last year where people would cherry pick, oh, this is the only thing they passed, this is the only thing they passed, this is the only thing they passed. That ended up being, I think, really misleading when it came to what we actually did with the CARES Act, which I think is still very poorly understood in the public. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further discussion, just as a reminder to the body, the motion that we have right now is a motion to amend the motion to bifurcate to add line 25 to the motion to bifurcate. With that, members may proceed to vote.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia, are you with us?
That motion is approved 7-2. All right, now we are back at the motion to bifurcate. Are there any further amendments to the motion before we proceed to vote?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add section 36 to the first part of the section that has been bifurcated.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Did you want to speak to it further, Mr. Peterson?
Yes, much of the revenue that comes in early before the season starts for these teams comes from selling ads in their programs. And many of the companies that buy ads in those programs may not be in an economic situation where they can buy ads this year, or may no longer be in business. And so I think it makes perfect sense. I didn't ask for a huge amount of money. It's $10,000 per team. Like I said, this is seed money just to get them started. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the motion to amend the motion to bifurcate.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
That motion is approved 7-2. All right, is there any other discussion or amendments before we vote on the motion to bifurcate? Okay, seeing none, members may proceed to vote on the motion to bifurcate.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
So this is one of those weird ones. This motion fails 5-4. Per code, any motion needs 6 votes to be approved. So we're now back on the main motion. Is there any further, I guess we have our amendments, so we can go ahead and go through those. So first we have amendment number 1. Is there a motion?
Move amendment number 1.
Second. Moved and seconded. Who would like to speak to it?
I will, Mr. Chair. Thank you. This is $30,000 to the Parks Foundation to advertise and promote the permit holiday for Parks and Rec spaces. As we know, there is an item on here for Parks and Recs permits to fund those free of charge for the public, but this would provide language access support and ensure equitability of access by getting the word out. And I would request your support to ensure that this holiday has the greatest reach possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to declare a conflict and ask to be excused from this vote and any other future votes involving the Park Foundation. I'll also say, just as a preview, I'm going to ask for a motion to bifurcation of my own when the time comes, so I don't vote on any direct Park Foundation funding as per our legal guidance. If there's a general pot of money that the Parks Foundation can access, I can vote on that, but if it specifies the Park Foundation, because I serve on the board, I ask to be excused.
Thank you. So,
prior ruling. I think there are prior rulings on this topic, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I was looking for the word. So yes, we have similar prior rulings that I have made on this issue where I will declare that you have a conflict, and then when we move to the main motion, when we're ready for that, we will also do the bifurcation. So thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Yeah, I'm puzzled by this. You know, I mean, the permit fee relief is, I guess the administration can maybe clarify, but I guess you'd be able to use the buildings and stuff for free, just schedule them. And I just wonder what language issues there are there. Free is a pretty universal word, but 30,000 seems high. I mean, they could put it on their website in 10 different languages pretty simply, and that's where you go to register to use a parks building or rec center or rent the chalet or whatever it would be. I mean, I don't, what would this be used for?
Is it okay if I respond, Mr. Chair? Thank you. So as we heard about equitability considerations and language access, particularly from Ms. Smith when she talked about the gift card program, a lot of those folks don't just go and use a website, and they don't necessarily just go and access a lot of our government services in the traditional means. So this would really be ensuring that groups and individuals who aren't accessing you know, things through websites or going to apply for their permit online are made aware through direct outreach to partners and community leaders within those communities.
Thanks. Did you have a follow-up, Mr. Weddleton?
Well, yeah, but at some point, if they want to rent the facility, they're going to have to call up Parks and Rec or something like that if they don't use the internet, and Parks and Rec go, oh, by the way, it's free. So I understand language access, and I would have actually liked to have added some to this, but it sounds like that won't happen. But this just seems like a silly place to apply that. Gift cards might be complicated, but this, if you want to rent the chalet, you call Parks and Rec or you go online. $30,000?
You may not even know about the ability to rent the parks. That's the deal, or the chalets. The idea is to expand the usage within our community through direct outreach when this opportunity is free. Because price may have been a barrier previously, but even just knowledge about the spaces could have been a barrier. We've not tried it. But if we want to build in these spaces for all residents of this town, we've got to make the effort.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions. Mr. Weddleton asked mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, and just to reiterate what I heard from my peer over here is that the issue of access is one that's very interesting. Those who know, and those who don't. And that the resources that the municipality has put to the table in so many different ways, you can really trace when you look at our EOC reports and the data analysis that they have, who's applying and who's not. Like just basically based on knowledge and foresight and connection to people who are involved in those assets in our community. It's like when you go to a community council in a neighborhood in my district still, it's the place you go to get things done, and you tell people that, you share them with that over and over again, and the message never seems to percolate to the people who probably need it the most. So to me, that's the underlying core of this. It's not such a substantial project that it's worth, living or dying on, but that's the issue, I think, when we talk about equity, is getting to the people who don't avail themselves of the tools that we make available, because it's just not part of the culture to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Chair. I guess I would want to know if, first of all, Parks and Rec actually requested this, and two, do they have a budget for advertising? And when we keep using the word equity, is it just bad advertising from Parks and Rec? And is that the reason it's not getting out? Is it because we believe that those individuals don't have social media? Is it because we believe those people, individuals, for whatever reason, aren't aware of what we have available, in the sense of just bad advertising all in general? So I'm not really sure how $30,000 is going to reach individuals. I just don't know. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess just to clarify, this is an Anchorage Park Foundation, not Parks and Rec. And I don't know if Ms. Nordlin is available to answer questions. Hopefully we can get her on if she is available. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not Beth Nordlin, but through the chair to Assemblymember Allard, this Chris Schutte, Director of Economic and Community Development. I did want to answer part of her question, although part of it was more specifically addressed, I think, to the sponsor. But to the part of the question about the marketing and outreach that currently is available to Parks and Rec, there is not a lot of it, and we do rely primarily on sort of the free platforms for marketing and communication about things like the Park Feet holiday. That includes, Facebook posts and social media and other things that I'm not very well versed in, but our 14-year-old is. I do believe that this proposal from the Parks Foundation does represent a significantly important way of increasing that reach, so that more entities are aware of the ability to use our outdoor public spaces for free this year. And by targeting populations that are not typically part of the communication channels that we use, especially since we have park assets located in literally every neighborhood in this community, it should increase the visibility of this fee relief. It should encourage more and more families and individuals to organize outdoor events, and we hope that it will be successful. So from the Parks and Rec perspective, I wanted to provide that information. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the amendment.
Ms. LaPrance?
Yes.
That amendment fails 5-3.
Mr. Chair, I have another Parks Foundation amendment I'd like to move while Mr. Dunbar is excused.
Yes.
I move amendment number 6.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Constant. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This would add $80,000 for the Anchorage Park Foundation to activate parks and trails and public spaces downtown and throughout the municipality this summer and in 2022 with partners by installing bike racks. We heard from Ms. Nordlin about this proposal last night, how it would work with the activation in downtown, and after getting an opportunity to speak with her and some more detail about this could be expanded municipal-wide. And they have committed that bike racks that are installed could also be, when they're no longer needed, that they would take them back and redeploy them. These particular bike racks are ones that accept a U-lock, which is the safest kind of lock for bikes, and it is the hope that folks will activate public spaces, but then also while moving between those spaces, have access to hook their bikes up and patronize businesses throughout the city, because this is a much needed amenity. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing no discussion, members may proceed to vote on the amendment.
Oh, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Vogel?
Did you, yes, did you see that I was in the queue?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So my question is, I'm racking my brain for how this is eligible as an expense, and I don't know if that's something that Ms. Zalatel had specifically in mind, and that I just might not be thinking about, but it doesn't fit into any of the categories in the interim final rule that I can think of, because downtown is not one of the areas that we could just, for example, single out and pour economic revitalization money into. There are some things that we can do for specific impacted census tracts, but I don't see downtown as being one that qualifies under that criteria. So I might be missing how this gets ARPA approval.
Thank you for that, Ms. Vogel, and I think I heard most of it. I'm sorry if I missed part of it, but it's not just downtown, it's municipal-wide.
So can I ask a follow-up?
Go ahead.
I guess I'm looking for the COVID hook, because I'm not sure that I see it. I think economic revitalization funds still need to be targeted towards those impacted. But there are a lot of different categories, so I'm sort of open to hearing how this fits into a different category of relief.
I can try to get a hold of Ms. Nordland. I don't think I'm going to have to pull up the prior presentation. I don't have all of those materials at hand in the moment.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess that just brings up another question from me then. If this is municipal-wide, does that mean that there are a certain number of bike racks slated for Eagle River and Girdwood? And I don't know if Ms. Zalatel could answer that question right now or not, but that would be, I guess, another question as to whether or not this is actually an actual municipal-wide expenditure. Thank you.
At this time, I'll withdraw the amendment to get the answers to the questions, and we can circle back if the second will agree.
Does the second agree? Okay. So Mr. Constant nodded his head yes for the record. All right. So then we will go ahead and withdraw this amendment and perhaps come back to it. So we can go ahead and bring back Mr. Dunbar and then move back in order of the amendments. Next, we have amendment number 2. Is there a motion?
I'd move this amendment number 2.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Who would like to speak to it?
So I'll just begin briefly by saying that when we began this process months and months ago, there were a number of projects that were put on the table by a member from Eagle River, and they didn't make it into the final cut. And so I said then that I would support these projects, and I'm saying it now. Ms. Allard might want to describe in detail the projects.
Thank you. Ms. Allard, did you want to speak to it?
I can. Thank you. So these projects were pretty important to the community, and this isn't just for Eagle River. This is muni-wide, so this will affect every single person's district. So when we're looking at it, you see that there's $250,000 for Team Alaska. These were families that lost funds due to COVID, and these were people that were going to travel to the Arctic Winter Games in Canada, and they weren't able to be reimbursed these funds. Team Alaska is the leader in the state of Alaska that we are putting on the 2024 Arctic Winter Games that will take place in the valley, Wasilla, and because of that, Team Alaska is out quite a bit of money, so this will help them. They can redistribute these funds back to the families, so those families can then participate in 2024 and other winter events. And then if you go to section 43, we have the $150,000 for the summer camps for assistance program. I believe this is an important program for the kids that are less fortunate. Parents that were out of work, they can now access these funds to help subsidize and get themselves back on track as far as getting these kids into some summer camps, get those spirits back up, fight the depression that's been out there, and bring the community back together. I would venture to say that the individuals and the families that would be asking for this assistance would be ones that are in need of it. I need it for my family. My girls go to a couple summer camps, but for me, I'm not going to apply for these, for example. It could be other families that are just in more of a need financially. My family stayed employed during this time, so I would love support on that one as well. And then when you're going to look at the one for the nonprofits, you're looking at Veterans of Foreign Wars, fraternal organizations like the Elks, the American Legion, and the lodges, and the Lions Clubs. The reason I'm asking for these funds, these clubs are actually fall under CHAR as well. They serve food, they also serve drink, and part of the issue was they weren't able to fundraise properly and they give back to the community. So they basically break even. They come in and support communities, whether it's on Flag Day, whether it's on Veterans Day, or any other event. It doesn't have to be militarily related. And they weren't able to provide for the community, so they actually, a couple of them shut down, and I would just like to show support for these so they can continue to give back to the community, because most of these didn't receive any money. And Chair, before I go on, I actually belong to the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, so I'm trying to figure out if I can even take part on this one.
Thanks. I'll go ahead. I don't have. All right, so we're going to take a short break so that I can get a copy of the ethics questions so that we can go through those.
Before we do that, could I just add one quick note to what Ms. Allard had said previously?
Sure.
I just want to add on the item 42 up there, while the games are in 2024, this isn't for that. This is for their ongoing participation in the sports activities to keep them outside and doing the positive things that are based in recovery from the COVID pandemic. So the 2024 is out there, but this is long before that.
Thank you, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, I don't think this is as updated. All right, so thank you. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. We are ready to get going again. For folks on the phone, I'm still waiting for members to come back. Once the members are back, I will announce that we are starting again. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started again, and then the other members will arrive when they do. Okay, so I have the list of questions before me. So I'll go ahead and answer the traditional ones. So first is the financial or private interest a substantial part of the matter under consideration?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, is the financial or private interest a substantial part of the matter under consideration?
No.
Does the financial or private interest vary directly and substantially with the outcome of the official action?
No.
Is the financial or private interest significant monetarily?
No.
Is the financial or private interest a type which is generally possessed by the public or a large class of persons to which the elected official or household member belongs?
Yes.
Okay. Based on your answers, I'm going to declare that you do not have a conflict of interest on this issue. Okay, so going back to the queue, first I have Ms. Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a similar question as I had regarding the last amendment for the sponsors of this one, specifically to the Team Alaska portion. I'm having trouble understanding the eligibility criteria for that. What I look at is the FAQ on funding has a category that only applies to a subset of our population. And it says, for those individuals, money can be spent on supports for students' social, emotional, and mental health needs, promoting healthy childhood environments, and the fact that the money would be reimbursed to families who paid out the money during, with the anticipation of being able to use it more. That sort of pass-through makes it feel like this is aid to those families. But when we're looking at who should we be giving aid to, it needs to meet the criteria in the statute and in the rule for giving out such aid. And those individuals are expected to be impacted in some very significant ways. And so I'm just not sure that this counts as the sort of hardship that or that the individuals that this money is going to be passed through to suffer the level of hardship that the law tells us is who can benefit from ARPA funding. So again, there are lots of categories, and so I'm not sure if I've hit on the categories that the sponsor intended to use, but I just wanted to highlight that I'm not sure how it fits the rule.
Can I respond, Mr. Chair?
Sure, you can respond, and then if Ms. Allard wants to, I will go to her as well.
Yeah, I just would offer that I don't think that necessarily this grant should be structured in a way that the money is passed through to individual families, but instead goes to Team Alaska for them to support the families to participate in their ongoing efforts to provide for the social and emotional, mental health, well-being, and further participation in the thing that makes life meaningful, which is associating with people in sports and in teamwork and all of those other things. And so I would offer that I would step back from the ledge of a pass-through grant that goes to individuals and really just say this goes to support Team Alaska in their efforts.
Thank you. And Ms. Allard, did you want to speak further?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Constant. That's true, and it is accurate. The bottom line is that when Team Alaska upfronted the money for the Arctic Winter Games in 2020, they didn't get any reimbursement. So Canada, the country, absolutely said no. So Team Alaska actually lost $250,000 worth of funds to sponsor those children to go. And then the monies that the children put forward was another step above that. So Team Alaska was trying to do the good thing. I would step back from the clip and say, let's reimburse Team Alaska so they can further sponsor kids who want to continue their athletics. Thank you.
If I might, Mr. Chair, one last note.
Sure.
I would also avoid the term of reimburse. Let's just say this is funding to support Team Alaska in their ongoing efforts after they lost so much during the COVID pandemic. The word reimburse might be problematic. And so let's just forward fund those adventures.
Okay, thank you. All right, next in the queue I have Ms. Salatel.
Thank you. For Section 43 for the Summer Camp Assistance Program, a few questions. Is there a program that a program in existence that this money is going to that already provides summer camp and they're just going to make their services more available or offer scholarships, or is this going to be a program that the municipality through the administration needs to stand up and an application period? And then how, if it's the latter, what kind of eligibility will there be? And then my other question on Section 44, I just want to verify whether or not any of these entities would be eligible for any of the restaurant relief currently offered by the federal government in its separate package. Thank you.
Thank you. Which of the sponsors would like to respond?
Chair, I could respond, and then Mr. Constant can as well, too. So in regards to the Summer Camp Assistance Program, I wanted to roll that through the MOA. If there's a different program or anybody on the Assembly has a suggestion, I'm completely open to it. I just know it's a vital program. And this is why I wanted to take just a little bit more time. I didn't get all into the details of it. My kids aren't in the summer camps for maybe the less privileged, and I'm willing to open up and we can discuss that further. As far as Section 44, and they were available for the CHARS program, but one of the issues was these particular organizations, they do not have a CPA. So you're dealing with individuals that are a little bit older, that didn't understand how to process everything, and the funds weren't necessarily available for them either. So they will not qualify any further because those funds have already been doled out and we already have a wait list on them. So I'd still appreciate support so that we can address these issues. There were a couple individuals within these organizations that did commit suicide, and these individuals really need to be able to raise the funds to put back money into the community and get the spirit back up in the municipality. Thank you.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still a little bit confused on the summer camp assistant program. You want to run the aid through the MOA, I got that, but is summer camp assistance program an actual identified program, or is this the program you were hoping to create? I'm sorry for the confusion.
No, you're fine. No, it's a summer camp program I hope to create. It's almost like a voucher system. So it's not going to any particular summer camp. It would be up to the families what works best for their children.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had originally put myself in the queue to ask about Team Alaska. I think what I heard, and I heard Ms. Vogel's questions in response, and then I think I heard the sponsors say that they were going to amend it, or mostly I am concerned about the reimbursement issue, because there are so many families who, lost out on school trips and band trips and choir trips and sports trips where, they didn't get the full amount back. So I just wanted to clarify that, is there an amendment or a language change that I may have missed after the call dropped briefly that's been put forward to specify that it won't be used for reimbursement for lost costs? Thanks.
Thank you. Which of the sponsors would like to speak to that?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
So there's no amendment that's needed in this case, because essentially we've just stated it on the record, and the funding as it would be awarded through the Department of Community and Economic Development, I would assume, or at least procurement, will understand that the term would be there's no reimbursement. This is a forward-funded program. And so it was never written into the language. That was just in the commentary.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just address Ms. LaFrance
Sure.
really quick? Ms. LaFrance, I also wanted to state that in regards to Section 42 it's going to be Section 43 into summer camp assistance. If children decide that they want to go to a music camp or a band camp or something like that, I would like this to be part of that, if that helps you with deciding.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bockenstead?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think most of my concern with Section 42 was taken care of by both Assembly Members Constant and Allard, kind of restating their kind of views on it. I do want to say, though, again, in regards to Section 43, that I think from the administration's perspective, this is one of those programs that seems to us to be more appropriate for the school board and the school district to potentially fund, because I think, as I told the body last night, they're also going to be receiving north of $100 million as well. So it seems from our perspective this one would be a nicer fit into some of those funds. But I would say both Section 43 and 44, from our perspective as well, are eligible to be used or eligible uses of either our funds or the school district funds.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
I think I'll just step out of the queue for now.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Oh, thanks. Just a minor thing at the end of this, when if you look on the screen, it has 41 for Team Alaska, 42 camp assistants, 43 for the lodges, and those should be 42, 43, and 44.
Thank you.
I'm hopeful that the clerk can fix that.
Yeah, just whatever it takes to fix it.
Do the rows exactly correspond to the sections?
Well, on the S version, they added a 41 already, so.
So the clerk has notified me that that's something that they can do on their end. Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with what the administration said about Section 43 in regards to the summer camps falling underneath the ASD. There's no guarantee. I don't trust the ASD's budget, and this is for us to vote on, and this is something we can do ourselves, and I don't want to rely on a different organization to do it when we can just pass it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel, and then I'd like us to vote.
I move to amend the amendment, removing sections 43 and 44.
Is there a second? Okay, not.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Perez-Verdia. Would you like to speak to it, Ms. Zolotel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So section 44, it sounds like those entities really would benefit from technical assistance on how to apply for the broader restaurant relief that is available, and that is something that is funded in this package in multiple ways, either through the nonprofit stimulus or the technical assistance for small businesses on lines 11 and 12 on the chart. And I tend to agree with the administration, particularly on the summer camp assistance with regards to the school district, because we don't naturally have the infrastructure ready to get those kinds of funds out the door quickly. That would be requiring us to stand up a full application and a full program. So I would hope that we can signal very directly to the school district that there is this need for summer camp assistance, especially since the school district does run several summer camps and their buildings are used for summer camps and have those relationships built. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Allard, on the amendment to the amendment?
Yeah, in regards to section 44, you're dealing with military veterans, you're dealing with an older generation, but they lost money. In fact, one of the clubs had to shut down, and their only way of reopening is if they access these funds. And to delay it, because everybody's concerned about that, to have them go through another process with all this happening, it's just not fair. They hadn't received anything, ever. And to just say, okay, now you're going to have to go through the process. If they could have gone through it already, because we had all that there, they would have. So recognize that these are military veterans, all of them, and that they need help now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
And I'm just going to speak against the amendment. I think that the language is carefully crafted, that they have to show that they have had losses. I think that the summer camp program, I imagine the Parks and Rec Department will have a really nice time helping people who normally couldn't get to camp, go to camp. And so this happens a lot where in my Fairview Rec Center days, we're passing the hat so we can pay for kids to go to summer camp. And there's a lot of value, and the parks are there saying thank you to us because they don't have the means to do it. And so to me, I want to lay this down into the Commerce and Economic Development, Community Development, and just let them make some lives a little bit brighter. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the amendment to the amendment.
Ms. LaFrance. Mr. Perez-Verdia.
No.
That amendment to the amendment fails 8-1. We're now back on the amendment. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, would you restate what the amendment is?
Sure. So this is proposed amendment number 2. Do you need me to restate the sections of the amendment?
Okay, are we back on the main, sorry, I cut out for a minute there. Are we back on the main amendment then?
We are back on the main amendment, yes.
Got it, thank you. Sorry about that.
Thanks. All right, seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the main amendment.
We know what you meant. Ms. LaFrance.
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia.
Yes.
That amendment is approved 10-0. Next, we have Weddleton Amendment number 3. Is there a motion?
Move Weddleton Amendment number 3.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Weddleton?
This is a request from Covenant House, which I think we all got, and we're familiar with their good work. They had previous asked for $500,000, but they got some through an ESG grant and for $225. I'm sorry, they got $275 from the ESG grant, so this just needs $225,000 more. Rapid housing of youth, which I think ties in with much of the other homeless components in this ordinance or resolutions. It takes the money from the much targeted UAA program, and actually in this one decreased that by $500,000, though I'm only looking for an amendment for $225,000. Partly because I saw that bottom line of extra money diminishing over time, and I think there's some benefit in having a little bit left over. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Welton, for bringing this amendment. I will support this amendment, but I want to state the caveat very clearly that that's because of the COVID impacts and what we heard from Ms. Mativer about foster youth landing in Covenant House. If we go back and look at the data on homelessness, I'm going to underscore the greatest need is for single adult chronic homeless individuals to find housing. So I support this. Covenant House always does a great job. Their need is elevated right now, but it is not the most pressing need in this community. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind as we continue to work through addressing the needs presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on amendment number 3.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That amendment is approved 10-0. Next, we have Weddleton Amendment number 4. Is there a motion?
Sorry, move Weddleton Amendment number 4.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Weddleton?
This really just clarifies the intent of one of the programs that we had already committed to before for grants, essentially, for personal property tax relief, which I think of as inventory tax. So the added words are, this program would be generally as presented in AO 2021-17S1, which we passed in December. Funds not committed to recipients by October 31, 2021 will be available for other uses. Not sure that's totally necessary because we haven't done that with the other programs, but it's just so that we only had 6 people take part in the first version of this. So, if it's grossly underused, I don't want that money to be tied up forever. And then information on this grant program will be included with the first round of personal property tax bills, and costs incurred by that mailing may be paid for from this allocation. And I think this is a really important program, and when we did it in December, only 6 people took part of it, I think because they didn't know about it. So if there's just a little piece of paper in with their bill that says, oh, by the way, if in 2020 you were shut down by any of the COVID mandates, then you would be eligible for this program, and you can describe the program in about 6 lines. So it would send them to a website. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, members may proceed to vote on Weddleton Amendment number 4.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That amendment is approved 10-0. Next, we have amendment number 5. Is there a motion?
Move amendment number 5.
Second. Moved and seconded. Ms. Zolotel?
Yes, thank you. This is, and I don't see the proposal having been printed off and provided to members. If we need to take a minute to do so, I would like to. This is a proposal from the Alaska Black Caucus so that they can secure physical space. This would be matching funds. The Alaska Black Caucus will, in this space, provide services in the area of economic recovery, education, community action to address systemic challenges including health for BIPOC communities that were disproportionately affected by COVID-19 pandemic. As you probably recall, the Alaska Black Caucus has been front and center addressing equity issues with us around COVID-19 and in our community. This would give them the space as COVID ramps down to actually meet in person and have the ability to work with individuals face to face. They have been virtual in their ramped up activities through COVID, like many, but now it's time for them to transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will speak in favor of this. We've received email from them tonight, and they have identified an appropriate building with a number of other partners. And as Ms. Zolotel said, we know that COVID-19 unfortunately disproportionately impacted communities of color. It was also the case that particularly the first round of PPP grants disproportionately bypassed those same communities. And so my hope is that this facility will also facilitate applying for more federal programs, which we know will continue for at least a year and probably more. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Whittleton?
I'm challenged by this one. I'm sure it'd be nice to buy them a building. But I think there's a couple of issues that get me. One is, as it's presented here, this is to deal with kind of current COVID-19 things which are, as Mr. Dunbar said, next year or two. But a building's like forever, So maybe it's overkill. I mean, pay their rent for 2 years or something. Seems like it would meet more strictly the COVID thing. But then, I also worry, and I mentioned this at a recent work session, they would do economic recovery, that's good, education, that's great, community action to address systemic challenges, including health for BIPOC communities and so on, that's great. There's probably half a dozen other groups, several of them funded by this thing, that also do that. And I just worry that we have whole bunches of nonprofits doing the same thing, not coordinated, we're not efficient. And when we have this money, we have a little bit of a tool to say, all right, coordinate, no more overlaps. And I don't know that we're doing that. And then when we throw this thing in this extremely rushed situation with very little vetting, because we're hurrying this, it seems like overkill to me. I don't know if it's appropriate for what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. So I am in support of this amendment. I appreciate the concerns brought forward by Mr. Whittleton around duplication. But I think just yesterday, in fact, at the town hall, we heard from a provider who works with people experiencing homelessness in other communities about the fact that, in that arena, there is not a major amount of duplication, that each group works with sort of their target audience. And in this case, as far as I know, there is not duplication in this particular target audience or with the work that the Alaska Black Caucus wants to do. So, I think it's really important that our communities of color have a space with a trusted partner that they can go to and really work on some of these really critical issues that are more important now than they have ever been before. So I strongly support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to address a few of Mr. Welton's comments just about duplication. We have some proposals included in this package that wouldn't be here without direct outreach from the Black Chamber of Commerce. This was not on their radar. And so while it may be frustrating that things are siloed or folks aren't coordinated as well as we would like, some of that is the perpetuation of systemic inequities in the system. And until we address those and get in front of those, there will be some duplication. Also, I'd like to emphasize Chair Rivera's comment about a safe place to share ideas. I think the Black Caucus is a convener of groups, of multiple groups in the BIPOC community. And that's what they intend to do here. And they're stronger together. So, and then finally, just a little bit of clarification on the proposal. This is matching funds for rent, not for purchase. So, you know, I think that's an important, important detail because I wasn't sure if that was picked up in the initial proposal, I believe. And if you would like, the proposal should be in your email, but if we need to print it, just say so and we'll get it printed. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. So I'm going to make an amendment to the amendment. On page 8 of the underlying resolution, line 24, Barbara, I don't have it in writing for you. I'm sorry. It's one sentence. It's separate from this appropriation, but is to all of these appropriations. The language would be, grantees are expected to coordinate to ensure services are unduplicated as best as possible.
Second.
So the purpose of this language, because I've heard you say it a few times, John and Mr. Weddleton, and I agree with you. And I think if we can put this in the plain language of the resolution, that this is an expectation and we're going to promote it, then I think it's helpful language to all of the various categories where funding might seem close, but really is discrete.
Thanks. Can you repeat the amendment to the amendment again?
Thank you. The language would be, grantees are expected to coordinate to ensure services are unduplicated as best as possible.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Allard, did you want to speak on this new amendment to the amendment? Okay. I'll leave you in the queue then for the main amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. I guess I would just like some clarification on what is actually being deleted in order to add this, because it looks like we've already done some adjustments to the UAA Fast Track Career Certification Program. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So your question's on the main amendment?
Yes, I guess it is. Thank you. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. I guess while we have the question on the floor, would someone like to address that?
Sure, the funding is definitely coming from the UAA funding program. We heard yesterday that that program could exist at the $3 million level, and so we don't get anywhere near that with this funding reduction.
And Mr. Chair, I want to do a point of clarification. I misspoke earlier. It is building acquisition. I apologize. There's too much information going on sometimes. I apologize, Mr. Weddleton.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton, did you want to speak on the amendment to the amendment?
I'll speak on Ms. Solitel's comment. It is a lot in a hurry. Thank you.
Thanks. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment. Who was the second to Mr. Constant's amendment?
Mr. Peterson.
I am.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed.
Mr. Sayer, can you please repeat the amendment to the amendment?
Sure, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, as it reads on the board, it says grantees are expected to coordinate to ensure services are unduplicated as best as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the amendment to the amendment.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That amendment to the amendment is approved 10-0. So now back to the amendment as amended. Ms. Allard?
I don't have that paperwork in front of me. So, and I can't see because I don't have my glasses. So I need someone to break it down a little bit verbally so that I can make my comments, because I think Ms. Solitel said that it's not a purchase, it's a rental.
She actually corrected that statement. It is a acquisition.
Okay.
I believe we have someone from the Alaska Black Caucus available as well, Kerr. So we could contact that individual if that's what you'd prefer.
No, it's okay, because once you said that, I get it. I spoke to the president of the Black Caucus today, Celeste, and I told her numerous reasons why I didn't feel comfortable with this. We're in a game of purchasing buildings, and I don't feel comfortable with purchasing any buildings for anybody. And I'm going to go out and say that to purchase a building for one organization, and then you have a whole bunch of other organizations that, based on race or color, want buildings for themselves, I just don't think that's the road we want to go around. So I'm just going to be a no on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bockenstead?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to get in the queue, and I think this is probably a broader comment, but certainly I think a number of members have hit on it. But I wanted to highlight a couple of portions of the actual interim rule. And throughout the 150-page interim rule, as well as the frequently asked questions and the fact sheets, they continually kind of mention the fact that low-income communities and workers and people of color have faced more severe health and economic outcomes during the pandemic, not only because of pre-existing social vulnerabilities like low wage or insecure employment, but because they had also pre-existing health disparities likely contributing to the magnified impact of the pandemic. And one of the things that they highlight in here is that these fiscal recovery funds are meant to provide resources not only to respond to the immediate harms of the pandemic, but also to mitigate its longer-term impact in compounding the systemic public health and economic challenges of disproportionately impacted populations, which certainly, based on this document, the BIPOC community fits squarely in. And finally, I'll just leave you with this last sentence from the interim rule, and it's: Treasury encourages recipients to consider funding uses that foster a strong, inclusive, and equitable recovery, especially uses with long-term benefits for health and economic outcomes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Weddleton?
Sorry, one last thing. Mr. Bockenstadt, you're on there. I believe the answer is yes, but can you clarify that we are allowed to use this money to buy buildings?
As long as, through the chair, Assemblymember Weddleton, as long as it fits into an eligible use, there's no, there's nothing within the interim rules or the guidance that says acquiring property is something that's not allowed. But it does have to fit into one of the other pre-existing rules, which, as I just stated, most of what I read came directly from the interim rule. And I think this one fits squarely into that. So I would say for this particular instance, yes, I do believe that acquiring a building for this use is allowed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allard? Mr. Dunbar?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a point and then a clarification. So, you know, we are, it's not so much the building as the idea of a capital expenditure, right? And we are fixing I think it's a very good thing we're doing. We're going to put $500,000 towards fixing a food pantry in South Anchorage. We are purchasing a building for choosing our routes. We previously, under more restrictive guidelines, either significantly repaired or fully constructed a new health clinic in Girdwood, right? So we have gone down this path many times already, or we are planning to. So that's my first point. My second is a question. We talk about acquiring buildings, but I don't believe the municipality is going to own, or so I should ask, is the municipality intended to own this building and maintain it? I think it's more, as the case with the food pantry in South Anchorage, as the case with the health clinic in Girdwood, we are helping another organization with their capital needs. We are not acquiring a building.
That is correct. The sponsor has stated no, we are not going to be acquiring the building.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on amendment number 5.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes,
I'm sorry, Ms. LaFrance, could you please repeat your vote?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance, I think your cell phone might be breaking up a little bit. Could you please state your vote one more time?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Ms. LaFrance, we could hear you then. Can you please state your vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Perez
Thank
Verdilla?
you.
I vote yes.
That amendment is approved 8-2. Next, are we ready for amendment number 6?
Yes, we are, and
So before we continue, actually, I'd
Yeah.
like to ask Mr. Dunbar to recuse himself. This is another Anchorage Park Foundation amendment.
and I would ask Mr. Gates to put a revised amendment up on the board that isn't going to be distributed, just got revised. But I would move amendment number 6 as revised.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. If we can go ahead and put it up on the board.
And I'll just speak to the revision. So the revision is more closely, same intent, which is to get activated trails and spaces and bicyclists access to local businesses, more closely tied to the interim rule language, which opens more opportunities for tourists and residents to access our attractions and local businesses and connect with outdoor spaces. That's very much aligned. Also, it removes the Parks Foundation as the sole recipient. This would put these funds for an availability of distribution across our partners, but same intent, same plan. So I would urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break until we can get that amendment up on the board. we won't be able to vote. Okay, so we're going to get started again. Ms. Zolotel, did you want to, now that the amendment's on the board, did you want to speak any further to it?
I think I covered it. If there's any questions, happy to try to answer those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
So who would manage this program then? Where would the bike racks be stored and who would handle all the transactions?
Great question. I think that could run either through the Parks Department or we can work with various partners. I think Ms. Kennedy raised a good point. We need to ensure that this goes municipal-wide. So if we have a natural partner in Girdwood or Chugiak, Eagle River, and there are businesses who want bike racks for the summer and not any longer, we need to ensure that we can connect. I think one of the issues with bicycling around town is you're on your bicycle, you want to go get a cup of coffee, but if there is no bike rack, where are you going to leave your bike? You know, there's two pieces to this here. You get to do 2 for 1. You get to go and patronize our local businesses while also taking advantage of these great trails that Anchorage has to offer. And so we need to partner and we need to do some outreach on this. Ms. Nordlund brought the proposal forward. So I think there's already some really great ideas. I don't think we'd have to go far to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schutte?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, Assemblymember Weddleton, Assemblymember Zalatel stole much of my thunder, but I was just going to point out that we can and currently do run grant programs that provide funds to area nonprofits such as Anchorage Parks Foundation or such as Visit Girdwood, for example, that will work closely with the business districts in those neighborhoods to identify opportunities for bike infrastructure in a way that encourages and facilitates the visitation or the visitor industry in those areas and gets more people out renting bikes as they come to visit Anchorage. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anyone else in the queue. My apologies. The clerk reminds me that this amendment was withdrawn. So is there a second for approval of this amendment?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Allard on the amendment?
Thank you. We heard Ms. Vogel speak about it. Can she speak about this again in regards to, with this amendment, are we still treading water in regards if this is even possible?
Ms. Vogel?
To the chair, thank you. Ms. Allard, I think that this repackages it in and sort of changes the focus sufficiently to bring this into tourism support. I also heard the word infrastructure used by Mr. Schutte, which is an allowed expense if we were using revenue replacement dollars. So, maybe that's slightly further afield, but I think the tourism boost and it being tied in with business support of businesses that have been suffering, I think those are the hooks that we needed. So I'm less concerned about this being outside of the bounds now.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Thanks. You know, I have ridden my bike all over this town, all over the municipality, to Girdwood, to Eel River, to Eklutna, and I can tell you one thing that doesn't exist in our business spaces, which is Eagle River around Jitters, where I always stop every time I pass through town, or Spenard even. You cannot find a place to lock up a bike except on a pole. And bikes get stolen in this town. Bikes are good for business, bikes are good for community, and bike theft is a scourge in this town. And so I think there's a great opportunity here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Just briefly, Spenard actually has a bike rack program, and you will find that many businesses now specifically designed bike racks thanks to Cook Inlet Housing on subsidizing business purchases.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on amendment number 6.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdilla?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunbar is recused.
That amendment is approved 6-3. All right, so that completes our written amendments. So now we are on the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to bifurcate.
Second.
Sure, we can go ahead and handle those now. As I understand it, there are actually a couple of different motions to bifurcate that we need to do. We do need to do the motion to bifurcate for Mr. Dunbar and the amendment number 6, so the new section 42 that was just approved. Mr. Dunbar, are there any other sections that need to be bifurcated?
Did you pass the one when I was gone the first time?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't see any others that were specifically where the Park Foundation was called out, so I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Actually, Mr. Chair, the last amendment was not directed towards the Park Foundation. It was changed.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I withdraw my motion to bifurcate.
Sorry we had you leave with the changed amendment.
Thanks. All right, then, Ms. Kennedy, do you have a motion to bifurcate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm looking for the number of the section.
35.
Thank you. Move to bifurcate with section 35 pulled out for purposes of potential conflict of interest.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, and I would be included in that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think fitting with the previous rulings that I have made regarding individuals who serve on board of directors of organizations which are receiving money, I will rule that both Ms. Allard and Ms. Kennedy do have a conflict. Then that means that hopefully members will approve this motion to bifurcate. Ms. Allard, did you want to speak to that motion?
No.
Okay.
I wanted to remain in queue for another one that's going to come up.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
I'll keep you in the queue then. All right, seeing no one else then in the queue, members may proceed to vote on the motion to bifurcate.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdilla?
Yes.
Okay, so now these two items are bifurcated, so section 35 will be one, and then the remainder will be a second item. So let's go ahead and take up section 35, and then we'll come back to the main item. So I will go ahead and ask Ms. Allard and Ms. Kennedy to recuse themselves so we can do this vote. All right. Can I get a new motion to approve section 35?
Move to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, members may proceed to vote. And again, this is just for section 35.
Mr. Chair. Oh, wait. Never mind.
Mr. Constant?
After, thanks.
Okay.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez Verdilla?
Yes.
That item is approved 7-1. Okay, so Ms. Allard and Ms. Kennedy can come back in. All right, so now we are on, we have to do another motion, yeah, to approve. So procedurally, are we okay if we don't do a new motion?
Let's do a new motion.
So on the advice of the clerk, we're going to go ahead and do a new motion to approve everything minus 35. So can I get a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. So now this is a new motion to approve everything except for Section 35. Section 35 was approved. Okay, so now we're now on the main motion to approve everything except for 35 as amended, starting with Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have just a little note. I don't know if there are going to be more motions to bifurcate, but my suggestion is that we, if there are, we take up the main motion, vote on the main motion first, and then vote on the sort of vestigial, the extra points after. That would be my suggestion.
Sure. Hopefully we don't have any other motions
I
to
think
bifurcate.
there's one more, right? 9-star?
Oh, Mr. Weddleton doesn't have a conflict there well, yeah, I shouldn't say it. You should say it.
Okay.
My wife no longer works at 9 Star as of Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is a new motion, I move to postpone till June 8th, the rest of the sections.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to it, Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do. I didn't speak to the other bifurcation issue for the most part, but I do have several
Chair, can I do a
reasons.
point of order?
Go ahead, Ms. Allard.
I apologize, Ms. Kennedy, but I had put myself in queue because there's a couple of verbal amendments that I wanted to do. Can we do that before we go here, or do you want me, how does that work?
So I guess that will depend on the sponsors of the, movers of the motion to postpone, if they want to rescind that motion and then do any further amendments and then come back.
Unless we could do the amendments later, but I'm worried that if it...
So if this motion to postpone succeeds, then when this comes back to us on June 8th, we can do further amendments.
That work, okay.
Okay, so then please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably have 6 or 7 or 8 reasons why we should be postponing this. One, the first one is we have an S version, and typically when we have an S version, we've allowed another opportunity for public participation, public testimony. And I know there will be members that say, well, we've had this out for weeks and we've had other work sessions, and to a certain extent that's true, but it's not completely true. What we did over the last several work sessions was we listened to some presentations about the kinds of funding that we should get, the kind of funding that the state would get, and then we gave members the opportunity to basically add to a list of potential projects. None of those projects did we, well, I shouldn't say none. Most of those projects just became added to a big list, and we didn't have the opportunity to really vet most of them. We had some speakers who came in and spoke specifically to their request, but what we really did was we just put a giant wish list together. And a lot of what came forward was kind of like the first ones who could run in here and say, hey, you know, this is my project, how about we fund this? And I'm not making any judgments on whether those are good projects or bad projects at this point, but I think that is what the public would probably like some more information about. I know I would. There are things that are in this document that, to me, are promising a work product. There's an expectation of a result. You know, there are studies being done. So I'm assuming that there's going to be reports to be given, and we don't have any of that actually specified. I don't think that there are certain things that I think might still be legal questions, which Ms. Vogel was raising today, the potential legal questions on some of these. So again, I think there's still a lot of work to be done, and particularly since we do have this S version, that, like I said, typically we give that extra opportunity for public participation. I think the other thing, and a couple people mentioned this in the public testimony, and that is, it seems to me it would be a common courtesy to allow the incoming newly elected mayor the opportunity to participate in these decisions. And that hasn't happened here right now. And even if we gave an extra week, there would be an opportunity for the new administration to at least respond to what might be good or bad about the entire list. Third, the public really has requested it. I mean, we have heard from other people that were testifying today, and I've gotten emails about it too, that they really are asking for a little more time. Now, and again, we put this list together kind of over several weeks, but we never really vetted much of it at all. I think there are some redundancies in here. I think there are probably some policy calls that some of this relates to that we really haven't addressed at all. I'd like to have some more conversation about how this really fits into the bigger picture of things that we have going on in this municipality. I think the bigger question for me is, who haven't we heard from? Today I got 2 asks, and I haven't been able to really fully understand exactly what they are asking for, but I'm wondering if those are amendments that I should be making to add to this list. Today, we got another request for purchasing a building, and typically I have opposed that in the past. I mean, that's just been kind of my thing, is that I don't believe we ought to be buying buildings, and particularly for nonprofits, but at the same time, if that's a trend and that's part of what's allowed here, then I know at least 2 other nonprofits in my community that would love to have a building purchased for them, because that's the biggest struggle they have, is trying to maintain the funds that pay the rent. And one of these organizations moves regularly, not regularly, but relatively often, just in order to find kind of the cheapest bargain commercial property in the area. I think the other idea is, you can argue that this wasn't fast-tracked, but at the same time, it is fast-tracked because we are not asking a lot of the fuller questions about how this money really should be allocated. And I think taking an extra week or 2 weeks would basically make this more reasonable. We all know that decisions that are made quickly tend to come back to bite us. We saw that with CARES Act funding, and so I certainly want to make sure we've done our homework completely. And again, the other thing was just the idea that there is some monitoring and reporting requirements in some of these that I think we haven't specified in terms of what that really is, what kind of work product do we expect, what is the municipality paying for in the way that we would expect something in return, because that's kind of what is being offered in the request for the funds. So those are all my reasons at this point, and I would hope that we would be able to just take a deep breath and say, okay, we're going to do this right, we're going to do it well, and we're going to take the time to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Chair. I'm also looking at wanting to postpone for various reasons. There's a couple of them here. I could just give a couple of examples. 34F for the $45,000 for the Chukiak Eagle River Library. I'm not on board with that. That's my district. That to me is not something that's needed at this time. The library received money from the budget. They've received money from the coronavirus relief funds, the CRF. They've also received funds through bonds, and now they're looking at getting more through ARPA, which, if my calculation's correct, we're hitting close to $1 million for the library. And so I have concerns with that. The other one is the gentleman that testified in regards to the food pantry. So he's looking at additional $250,000. I didn't know he needed that money. Based on that, I want to take my time and reevaluate and see where we can move money around and help them more with that situation. The other issues I have is, and I know they're here, I've seen them, they've come up here, in regards to the $150,000 roadmap for vital and safe Anchorage services. Don't we already have a roadmap? And if we don't, why not? And we're spending an additional $150,000. Not saying I'm against it or for it, I just want to delve into it a little bit more to find out what's going on there. And like Ms. Kennedy, I have a whole bunch of other issues. $3.5 million on beetle kill, and who's going to be doing that, and how many people are going to be employed to do that, and are we using the funds correctly to kill trees or cut the trees down when that's $3.5 million? The other thing is, when we're looking at all of these, Ms. Kennedy hit it, are we just going to be buying buildings for everybody? Because I'll have to tell you, my community, we love a town center. And when I say a town center, I mean a town center that can fit more than 50 people at a time. So I am not on board with building or purchasing all these buildings, and we really need to look at that, because then I'm going to fight hard, get my community out here and say, y'all want a building? Let's do this. We have one building in Eagle River that we can actually house people to come in, to come in as a community, and that's the Lions, and we have to rent it. So if all these other people are getting free buildings, I mean, this is what we're going to be doing with our funds? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance? Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to amend to change the date to postpone it to Tuesday, May 25th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, we have worked for months on this, and as it's been pointed out, at the end of, the CARES Act funds, when those were expended, we were criticized for not getting the money out fast enough, and there were many projects that were not included in that first round, and we ended that with a very good idea of what needed to continue and some new ones. So we've been working on this for many months. However, I can appreciate wanting to ensure we have done a final vetting and have received all the feedback, and that an additional week would provide some time to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to vote against this motion to postpone for the reasons that Ms. LaFrancis alluded to. I think we need to get this money into the hands of the people of Anchorage as soon as possible. I'll also say something that Ms. Kennedy said really stuck out to me. She said, rushed like the CARES Act. We spent endless hours, work sessions, public hearings on every every portion of the CARES Act funds. And certainly people disagreed with how some of those were spent, but it was not rushed. In fact, quite the opposite. The main critique is that we took too long. And I think that the sort of rhetorical point will exist. If we pass it tonight, if we pass it in a week, if we pass it a month from now, I don't think that the tune will change. People will say that it wasn't vetted enough. People will say that it was rushed. Unfortunately, that is just the world of the sort of the media environment we find ourselves in right now. So given that, and given the months that it took us to get to this point, I want to get the money out into the hands of the people of Anchorage as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the motion to amend the amendment to postpone this until May 25th.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdilla?
No.
That amendment fails 6-4, so now we're back to the motion to postpone this until the meeting of June 8th. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote on the motion to postpone this item to June 8th.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdilla?
No.
That motion to postpone fails 6-4. We are now back on the main motion. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. The main motion except 35 is what I've got.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. The clerk advises me the main motion except for 35. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I need to do my verbal amendments now. Okay, so then we have 5 million. I don't know what it's gone down to with the UAA. I'd like to take the 5 million, move it over to the food pantry it was 500,000 for an additional 250,000 for my first amendment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So are you asking that it's an additional 250,000 for line?
Sorry, my notes. I would like to subtract 250,000 from the UAA one for the 5 million. I'm trying to look through my notes and move it over to the food pantry. Yes, Chair.
Okay, so that's removing from the UAA section, which I don't have in front of me, to section 37.
Yes, Chair.
And that was an amount of 250,000?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, did you want to speak to that further, Ms. Allard?
I think the gentleman that came up earlier spoke to it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on that amendment? I guess I was in the queue.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, I was in the queue to do something similar. I wouldn't have done 250,000. I would have just done the 100,000. But I will support this increased amendment and thank Ms. Allard for bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bockenstead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess from the administration perspective, I would offer that one of the earlier amendments that passed, I believe it was Weddleton Amendment number 3, moved an additional $275,000 from the UAA into what was considered a fund balance. And I guess I would offer, instead of taking an additional $250,000, because we've already taken almost $2 million from this UAA program, and removing this would take it under the $3 million threshold at this point. That would seriously reduce the number of individuals that would be helped. I think the administration would offer that maybe taking it from the additional fund balance might be an appropriate way to fund this amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Zalatel?
I move to amend the amendment to take the funds from the fund balance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Did you want to speak to that, Ms. Zalatel?
Mr. Bockenstead already articulated the reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton on this amendment to the amendment?
I don't know that it's a bad thing, but except that, what we've got here with the 500,000 that is there is for a project that isn't really what's currently envisioned, and it's a much more significant $5 million expansion of the operation. And so what we're doing is a relatively small part that is part with matching funds and so on. And I just, I want to read what it says in the text here. I wonder if Mr. Prince or Pastor Prince, can you come up? May I? Okay. Hi, thanks. So, what we have here in the text now says to repair, expand, and upgrade food pantry, storage, and distribution facilities. So I suppose this phrasing here is probably more correct than what's in the spreadsheet, or more broad. But your vision now, this would be, after this, $750,000, but this would be used as matching for other funds, or how would this be used?
It will be used in several ways. First of all, like I said earlier, we now have some corporate and individual donors who are ready to help us with the rest of the money. And like I told you guys, if you I would say days ago. I think it's up to 1 week now. We are breaking ground in August and hope to put a roof on it by October, and then work on the inside through the winter. So it's not like a project that is not going to kick off right now. So even with the 500,000, we'll still do something, but it's not going to be enough. So what we want to do now is to have enough money to now attract the rest of the funding and finish this project, hopefully by December. But latest, by this time next year, it must have been finished.
Okay, so worst case scenario is you could start and you framed in your building, but you don't have the commitments for the full dollars. I mean, you envision a basement in addition. I mean, that's quite expensive too. So is that correct? Are you going to still go with the basement?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's a matter of city code. We had a previous plan, and then when we got into it, started discussing with the engineers, the city and all that, we discovered that due to the city code, that the amount needed will far exceed what we previously thought. So that's what is leading us to this now. And by the way, remember, Revive Alaska Community Services doesn't just give food pantry to the community. We are a full-scale, multi-faceted community development corporation that does a lot of humanitarian services in the community. So the building itself, the major thing that is going to be in the building, it's the pantry, but then the offices, the conference rooms and all that are going to be used for the rest of the operations that directly affect the community, including mental health counseling, which, of course, if you go to our website to see all those information. We have what is called Help Me Here Now. And, of course, this COVID-19 has affected so many Anchorage residents that they all need, many of them need counseling, they need direction. We also have, as part of the food distribution, the Back to Job or Back to Business program, which we are doing, and of course we're now liaising with 9-Star and other agencies, whereby people who were destabilized due to the COVID-19 and they don't have a job now, they don't have a business now, they can go back to work. We help them with getting back to work through the services we offer. So it's not just the food pantry, get it down, $750,000. It's a whole full-fledged support for the whole work that we do.
Thanks. Some of that worries me because, again, we get into the situation where you have an amazing vision that is similar to about 5 or 6 other operations that we're funding, and if they're not coordinated, I think it's a problem. Can I ask a question of the administration? Sure. So, Mr. Bockenstadt, in this case, so we give this grant and it goes towards a building that's quite expensive. It would be probably $5 million to complete the whole thing. And we're putting in, less, I guess a little over 10%, but then what happens? The money's there and a building is partially built? Where does that leave us?
Sorry, before you answer, it's not just...
I'm sorry, this is for administration.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I just want to make a correction. Even though it doesn't make much difference, what I stated is 3.5 million, not $5 million.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes. Thank you for the correction.
Who from the administration can respond?
Through the chair. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Nope, go ahead, Mr. Treaty.
Yes, through the chair, Chris Treaty, Director of Economic and Community Development. Assemblymember Weddleton, I'm going to try and answer your question via paraphrase that I probably got wrong as you asked that question, but I think the root of your question is if the Assembly appropriates an amount of money, $6.5 million for a building to be constructed for the food pantry and other services that were described, how would that process work at such an early stage? Sounds like there are plenty of unknowns yet in the to-be-developed building. So there are a couple of options. One way that the municipality has proceeded in the past is that the amount of money that is granted or in some cases has been bonded for things are established as a construction draw, meaning that There is an outcome that is requested of the recipient, but the recipient draws on those funds as they progress in the project. What that does is that limits the amount of the appropriation available to the requester and provides the municipality a degree of protection. In other cases, there have been projects for construction where the process itself is much further along. So construction drawings, for example, are at a high percentage of completion, or some entitlements have already been achieved, et cetera. In those cases, the municipality has done direct funding through grants or other ways of transmitting money, and it's for a fixed amount to complete what is an already established and, in some cases, initiated project with at least a more solid known total cost amount. In the same way that the first one sets a limit on the amount of money that can be obligated by the MOA, this one would do the same. So for a project that has, say, its entitlements in place and construction drawings in hand, they would cost estimate the project to be $5 million and come to the MOA with a $5 million request. If the MOA granted that money but the project ran over, the responsibility for meeting the demand above and beyond what the municipality appropriated would fall on the project sponsor. And I hope I answered your question. Like I said, I was trying to paraphrase it based on what I heard. Thank you.
Well, I guess maybe, but so, I mean, we would be pitching in $750,000, which I guess would be about 20% of the project, which is a $3.5 million building. Is there a way to say, okay, here's this grant, but we want to see that the rest of the money is in hand or committed before giving the grant? I just don't want to end up with part of the building.
Yeah, through the chair, Assemblyman Weddleton, absolutely. So there are other ways, whether it's a capital construction project or otherwise, there are ways where the municipality can make its grant agreement or its contract agreement with the recipient incumbent or dependent upon achievement of other either fundraising goals or other sort of milestones as deemed appropriate by the Assembly.
Can you give me that wording right now? We're about to vote.
If you will let me not recite on the fly, but think of it and type it up, I would appreciate being able to send it that way. I think better that way.
I agree with that, but we're not working that way. Can we wait a moment, Chair, to get?
Yeah, would that be okay?
I think we have other items that we can get to. There may be other amendments. So let's go ahead and do the rest of that, and then we can come back to this amendment.
Okay, is that okay, Ms. Allard? Okay, all right. So,
thank you. All right. So before we move on, I would like to request a motion to extend the meeting to midnight, although I really hope we're not here till midnight.
Moved. Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Okay, seeing none, then we are extended till midnight. Okay, Ms. Adler, do you have another amendment?
I do, thank you, Chair. So I am looking at moving, it's section 34E, and it's for $40,000 for the MiFi, and I'm looking at moving it over to, delete it completely, take the $40,000, move it over to section 23, which would be the broadband infrastructure for Chugach Eagle River Center, and with the combined total of $94,000. And maybe Ms. Kennedy can speak on that, and hopefully that will cover everything that we need for the Chugach Senior Center.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for purposes of discussion. Sure.
Okay. Ms. Kennedy, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Actually, I'm not sure exactly what the thought is behind that, so I'm not sure I can speak to it, but and I'm not sure exactly where would be moved to. The $40,000 would be moved to the Chugach Senior Center. Is that what I heard?
Can I speak to her, Ms. Chair? Ms. Kennedy, do you remember when we spoke earlier today in regards to you were thinking that it might not be enough money for the infrastructure? If it's plenty, then we're good, and I can leave things the way they are. But I thought it was we might not have enough for the broadband infrastructure improvements for Chugach Eagle River Senior Center.
No, they are good with that number for now, so that'll work. The 44,000 for the broadband upgrades at the Chugach Eagle River Senior Center is an adequate and accurate amount.
Okay, then can I withdraw my amendment? Thank you.
Does the second agree?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. I'll go ahead and go to Mr. Constant. You're in the queue.
Never mind, it was on the amendment.
Okay. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question of the administration in regard to Section 22. That is one of my entries, but the way it reads in this particular resolution makes me just want to ask whether or not there's enough clarity in that language to make sure that the idea there is to use the funds for basically for voucher, gift card distribution, just so that it is a separate effort than anything related to food, which is typically what a food pantry provides. So maybe the administration can just clarify that what they have in Section 22 is actually what originally was put in the framework document. Thank you.
Who from the administration can respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, Assemblymember Kennedy, Chris Schutte, Economic Community Development Director. Yes, so the language in the spreadsheet is a paraphrase, but the original submission that you provided that has that additional detail that you just summarized is what will be used in conjunction with our negotiation or conversations with those entities on creating the grant agreement or contract language so that it's very specific to the outcome or the work product that they described. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schutte, and that answers my question, so no need for an amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All right, not seeing any. What I will propose to do, because I think the administration needs a little bit more time before we go back to the Allard amendment, the 250,000 amendment. What I will propose to do is that we, actually, one quick thing before. Okay, so what I will propose we do, actually, sorry, I need to see if the administration, oh, okay, looks like the administration's ready. All right, so we'll go ahead and go back to the $250,000 Allard amendment on Revive Alaska Community Services. Mr. Schutte?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It will not be very pretty or very elegant, but to the question asked by Assemblymember Weddleton, I would suggest language that reads as follows. Funding to be released upon satisfactory demonstration of matching private fundraising.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Is there a time frame on that? Can we give it, I mean, these funds can be used through 24. Can we give it 2 years or something?
Yeah, through the chair, Assemblymember Weddleton. Yes, so the overall timeline to use the funds, you are correct, they do extend into 24. If you wanted to set a different timeline or due date for these funds, you should do it via this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, did you get that typed up, or can you repeat that, your amendment, Mr. Schutte, the regular reading, not with the time thing?
Sure, thank you. Funding to be released upon satisfactorily demonstrating matching fundraising.
Could I just slightly add to that?
We actually, sure, I guess we don't have an amendment on the floor, but go ahead if you have an
Yeah,
addition.
so I just want to add commitments. The word commitments, like not just that we're fundraising, but we actually have matching funds committed. There's a difference, like, hey, look, I'm fundraising for matching funds. So I just would add committed to the end, or some language along those lines.
All right, the clerk has it, so will someone make a motion to amend that section?
Give me a moment, I want to add some.
Okay. So it's in the same section, yeah. So yeah, we can just combine it all into the
Okay, you ready? Move to amend the amendment to add to section 37 that the funding is to be released upon satisfactorily demonstrating matching fundraising commitments to complete the proposed project by December 31, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to that further, Mr. Weddleton?
Yeah, I want to give this a shot. I think the vision is tremendous. It's an organization that I've just recently become introduced to, and I don't know that it's, I want to see that its capacity is enough to actually pull this ambitious project off and not have part of a project, and I think it's just prudent. This gives over, almost 2.5 years to get that done, so it's, I think fairly generous, and I think it's something that they can do. But we just should have something in there to make sure that it is done. Thank you.
Can you read it one more time, Mr. Weddleton?
So this would be right at the end of section 37, add funding to be released upon satisfactorily demonstrating matching fundraising commitments to complete the proposed project by December 31, 2023.
Thank you.
I can't read my writing. Okay, fundraising commitments to complete the proposed project by December 31, 2023.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel on this amendment to the amendment?
Yes, thank you. Question for Mr. Schutte. The spend on these funds is 2024. Is that in line with if we were to have to come back and reappropriate these funds in some way? Is that enough time? I just want to make sure I understand the appropriation timeline versus the spend timeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, Assemblymember Zalazal. So if I understand your question correctly, are you asking is the proposed amendment deadline, does that give the Assembly enough time to turn around and reappropriate monies that are unspent or uncommitted to this particular amendment?
Yes, if the project isn't going to be able to go forward or in the timeline proposed by Mr. Weddleton, which was the end of 2023.
Thank you for the clarification. So through the chair, Assemblymember Zalatal, I believe you would have more than enough time to reappropriate any unspent funds should that deadline be, should they miss the deadline. Keep in mind, Assemblymember Weddleton also introduced a similar due date for distribution of funds for the property tax, business personal property tax grant program. Granted, that gives you guys a longer timeline to reappropriate those monies, but the idea of setting a spend by date and then if it's not spent, giving the Assembly the ability to reappropriate at a later date, you do have the ability to do that, and I think it's you have plenty of time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the amendment to the amendment.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
That amendment to the amendment is approved 10-0. We're now back on the amendment as amended. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, members may proceed to vote on the amendment as amended.
And this is, yeah, okay, that would be fine. Yes, Mr. Chair, we're going to do a voice vote because something is locked up here. This is on the Allard Amendment to take the funds from fund balance and move $250,000 over to the food pantry, section 37. Ms. Allard?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Weddleton?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdia?
Yes.
Ms. Zolotel?
Yes.
That amendment is approved 10-0. All right, now we're back on the main motion again. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Zolotel?
So we're on the main item, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So I am thankful and want to express my thanks to the administration for putting this package together and listening to our work sessions and where our priorities and the community priorities lie. I think bringing this forward and having, I think it was 6 amendments, means that they did hear us, and they did a really good job, I think, of balancing the various interests. And I think that if we look at this in the broader context of a few things, that this is really impactful. One, with regard to homelessness response services, and there are some in here, that coupled with the job training and the prevention services, along with the other funding streams that are currently moving through the system, whether those are emergency solutions grants or community development block grants, I think we've done a good job here of coordinating and leveraging our funds to get the biggest impact we can get. Similarly, I'm very happy to see us clear prior wait lists, and I appreciate that we are going to do that because that must be very frustrating for those entities that have been waiting. So I just want to thank everyone for bringing forward their ideas, the conversation. I think this proposal also reflects better, it's not perfect, but a lens towards equity, that we really thought about that as we looked at who hadn't been in the room. And so I would urge your support of this and that we get these funds out into the community and we continue our COVID response and we start working on recovery. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think I stated previously a lot of reasons why I wanted to see the postponement, which all of those reasons are what makes me very hesitant to go ahead and give a yes vote to this particular document in its current stage. I still have concerns about whether or not we are doing this without any of the input from the incoming administration. But I think mostly one of my biggest concerns and one of the reasons why I made the statement that I did about the fact that we rushed COVID response, and I will say that in terms of the fact that we came out with our initial plan, and what happened was we ended up having to sit back and get guidance, more clear guidance from the Treasury Department. So we did act somewhat hastily, because at that point, we did not obviously have the right information, and it took that conversation, which did cause us to wait before we got that information and then could move forward with a better understanding of how we could or couldn't use the funds. So my question right now, though, as I still wrestle with whether or not to support this as it is whether or not we, and this might be a question for Mr. Bockenstead or Ms. Vogel, but do we absolutely believe that every project here is going to pass the scrutiny of the Treasury Department or anybody else who thinks the state, anybody else that thinks they have the ability to weigh in on our decisions here? So if I could have a response to that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Who from the administration would like to respond?
Through the chair, this is Kate Vogel, municipal attorney. The first thing that I would say is some of these programs are going to need to be administered in a way and with conditions that make them apply to the fairly complicated interim final rule. We had done a legal vetting on everything that was part of the initial proposal, and that's why the questions that you heard from me today were about the amendments, the things that had not been part of the administration's proposal, and thus did not have, in my head, a spot where they fit, at least for the couple issues that I brought up. But as you could tell from the process, there's a lot of different buckets that are allowed by the interim final rule, and there is room for movement and casting projects or changing the focus of projects, or not saying that things are pass-through relief to families, but instead saying this is a nonprofit that we're supporting, right? That's a big difference from the ARPA standpoint, focusing on tourism and putting it into that bucket. So I think part of that is going to be work that continues into the future and how we administer these appropriations. So I think legal should remain involved. But no, I don't have any red flags with any of the programs that are in this package as discussed and amended today.
Thank you, Ms. Vogel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a couple comments. There are certain things in this packet that I absolutely don't support. Whether it's legal or not, it's the conservative side fiscally that I think that it could go towards other programs. And I really wanted the public to come out and voice some more concerns they have or some suggestions they have had. I've heard people up here that I didn't know that that was even an option for them. So although I do appreciate everybody's support on my amendments and some of the things that we passed for our district, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm still going to be a no on the overall packet because there's some things I just wholeheartedly disagree with. So, and I do want to add too that I feel it's a little unfair and a little quick. We all know there's an administration coming on board, and for that administration not to have any input, not that they legally have to, it's concerning to me. We're supposed to be working as a body, and I think that not having them have any say in it or to push this through quicker than when I wanted to bifurcate is an issue for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote on the main motion to approve.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Perez-Verdilla?
Yes.
That item is approved 7-3. That completes our business for this meeting. We're going to go ahead and move on to audience participation. Yeah. Welcome.
It's not staying on. Okay. Okay. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I'm sorry to see two Assembly members or one Assembly member moving around on this comments. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, the decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. What I witnessed tonight is an Assembly and administration being physically irresponsible, violating state law where it says not open means law, a reasonable opportunity the public be heard. Where was the reason for what happened tonight? The reason was members of the Assembly, including some candidates running for mayor, wanted to fast-track this scenario so that it wouldn't be taken up later and for the public to be engaged. I'd like to remind you, it was in this room last Wednesday night, just a few minutes before the end of the meeting, that this item was laid on the table. Now, when you can argue about work sessions and all that, yes, there were work sessions before, but the fact is the proposal, the numbers, and the details were not to the public until then. And then the S version tonight was not released until a few minutes before the start of this meeting. Where can you see that? The public could not see it online. So you wanted to rush this scenario. You decided to add quickly some amendments and do whatever you want to do. But the fact remains is you have shown a clear disrespect in complying with having a fair conversation with the public and providing a reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. You yourselves didn't even have appropriate time to review this matter, with all due respect. And I remind you of this again. Your delay before that proposal came about was because the delay was waiting for Treasury for more details. And not to repeat the scenario that happened in previous times when you got COVID money and there was a so-called guarantee, no, there's not going to be any problems. But there were problems when that COVID money was approved last year. So what do we have now? The few people here in this room, and I'd like to note this too. Yes, you did have a work session last night. But let's talk about how the public can be here. They had to be here to speak to you. There was no telephone hookup for people to call in. And it was a 45-minute area of that town hall scenario where that's what you did. You had from 4:30 to 7 and 45 minutes for public comment on a town hall portion. You really didn't care. And I fear, and I said this, the more complex and complicated an issue is, the more notice and the more opportunity the public be heard. But that did not happen with this significant issue. And I'll remind you in closing, this money is coming because of COVID. COVID. We cannot repeat this scenario, and you've done it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, I'm John Van Ravensway. I'm the Executive Director of Mountain View Health Services. I'd like to thank the Assembly for including us in this proposed funding and all the work that you've done here tonight. This is, it's not an exaggeration, but it's a great day for our communities to get the seed funding to develop infrastructure that's much needed. Like Mr. Wendleton said, this is a one-time shop, but we're using it to grow and promote our services that we can, quite frankly, access more federal money because we have this ability to do it now. We have the capacity to provide services that get reimbursed from other funding sources like Medicaid, which is half federal, or Blue Cross Blue Shield, or Aetna, or that we all pay into anyway. So we might as well have this capability to provide these services that we need, and people need them, and they need access to care. So for Mountain View, we're totally transparent. You're all welcome to visit and investigate our nonprofit and encourage us along, and we'd like to thank you for your support.
Thank you. I do have a question for you from Mr. Weddleton.
Yeah, not quite a question, but I think a lot of the points you just made, I'm familiar with through the Girdwood Health Clinic, where it's kind of been a similar process over the last few years. We've kind of been boosting them up, and I hope you've spoken with them. I mean, they're a very similar situation to what you're in.
Right. It takes people to build it, obviously, to build it, and then once it's there, people tend to come and know that it's there. They tend to not delay their healthcare needs when it's an easy, accessible clinic, and not hard to get to. So that's our goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having me back here. Just want to thank the members of the Assembly for approving our request and also approving the additional funding. And especially I thank Assemblywoman Julie Elliott for presenting our supplemental request. And it's going to be a very good boost for what we're doing. And I thank even Assemblyman who happens to represent our district, John Weddleton, for all the questions, even though I felt put on the spot, but it's an obvious thing that with 750,000, we're not going to finish the project that we want to do. So that's even an impetus and helps us in fundraising. Now we have a verbiage that we have to have the funds. So our donors are going to be more motivated now to support the project. So thank you for that too. And I thank every member of the Assembly that voted to support our project, and hopefully would do our best to help reduce hunger in Anchorage. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Rachel Colvard. Knew you were going to do it anyway. I appreciate the attempt at bifurcation to get the less controversial things, trying to get that spread apart from the things that you heard other people object to. I appreciate that attempt. The political spectrum of this body is leaning more one way than the other. But I think that I see sparkles of hope that, trying to reach across the aisle, as it were. But I also see a lot of things that don't need to be happening. I appreciate the attempt that, if we could take a more 30,000-foot view of things. But we've been doing this for like over 400 days. This was supposed to be COVID money. And now it's just who can get a bite of the apple first, at least in this initial go-around. Okay. But over a year ago, those of us that started showing up told you that we were going to be picking winners and losers, and that's exactly what we just did. So we're picking winners and losers. We still have over 100 businesses that are not coming back. And I think it was in one of the work sessions through the chair, John, that you had said that, we're a day late and a dollar short to this, to getting people the help that they need. And I guess my point that I've always been trying to be making is that if you just let people get back to work, they won't need any of these assistance programs. They can provide for themselves. I know we've taken a lot of the restrictions away, and if you've been around town at all, like this is like only the second day that I've actually been out of my house since we did that on Friday. They're really starting to pick up. And you still see people wearing masks. Okay. But for, the rest of us that can manage our own risk, we're doing that too. And I can appreciate that it's not always easy to work with personalities maybe, or archetypes that you would prefer to not to. But I'm seeing better and worse, and we're all human and cracked vessels and trying to do the best we can. And I guess I appreciate those attempts tonight, but we need to stop picking winners and losers and just get on with regular business. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone at all? All right, we're going to go ahead and move on then to assembly comments. I'll start on this side with Ms. Allard.
I don't have any, thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the best thing we did tonight was not delay this. You know, when we took our time to get the CARES Act, the original funding out, it took us a while to get the system set up, and we were criticized roundly for taking too long. Government just takes too long to do things. And so now we're trying to get this money out as fast as we can so we can save some businesses from going out of business. We can create some economic opportunities out there, create some jobs, get the economy rolling again. Doggone, what a surprise, we're wrong again. So you can't win no matter how you do it. So we're just going to do it our way. Sorry, folks.
Thanks. No comment from me. Mr. Weddleton.
Nothing.
Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No additional comments.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar.
I have to say, it took a year and a half, but y'all finally got to Pete.
Thank you. Mr. Constant.
I'm going to take a different tactic. So in the audience here tonight is former Representative Lescara. And he sat through this whole evening, and he was my representative while he served in the legislature. And I'm going to step back to June of 2008 and recognize that I have learned a lot in the years I have served here. And I've learned a lot about people's motivations and their drives and what makes them good or not good at what they do. And I am known for having a mouth that sometimes it gets ahead of my brain. And I will offer to you, Lescara, that I apologize to you for thoughtless commentary at a time when I knew much less.
Thank you.
I want the details, wait.
Go to Facebook. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just take this moment to elevate what we heard from Amanda Mativer tonight from Facing Foster Care in Alaska and put this call out. Look for their advertisements and recruitment for foster families. If you're at all thinking about it, reach out. I will make the invitation. You can reach out to me and I will help make connections. The need is critical, and just think about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Perez-Verdia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No comments tonight.
Thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.